I'm calling the business portion of the board meeting back to order. Executive session was completed with no action to report. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and I will ask Ms. Belize, could you lead?
Certainly. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We do have some guest visitors, so we have people in the audience, and I need to point out to you the emergency exit locations from this room. In case of an emergency, please follow the signs, get out directly as quickly as and safely as possible. This is a smoke-free school district. Smoking is not permitted in the building or anywhere on school grounds. It's also a hate-free school district, and hate and bullying is not permitted in this building or anywhere on school grounds. I think with the board's consent, can we just go down to D1 and let's go ahead and do that. Is that okay with everybody?
Okay.
This we've been looking forward to, so please let's take it out of order, and Dr. Gianni.
Sure. So as the board knows, our varsity football team recently concluded their season as Suffolk County Division II champions. So congratulations, gentlemen. We've invited the coaches and the captains to represent the entire team, along with Ms. De La Rosa, Mr. O'Reilly, and I'm also happy to see Mr. McIntyre with us this evening as well. And I'm going to look to Mr. McIntyre to say a couple of words and make the introductions.
Thank you. I want to hit the keyboard.
You'll be given the presentation.
First off, I want to say thank you to the Board of Education and Dr. Gianni for allowing me to recognize the varsity football team tonight for winning the Suffolk County Championship. It's truly an honor and a privilege. I'd also be remiss if I didn't thank Mr. Kevin O'Reilly for his leadership in steering the ship in my absence. So, Kevin, thank you so much. If I can invite our players and coaches up to the middle so that while I'm talking, the board will see you, and then Dr. Gianni, the president, will present you with your certificates.
Yeah, actually, you can come up and turn towards Mr. McIntyre because you're on YouTube.
All right. Our head coach, Coach Jamie Fabian, and Coach Watkins are with us tonight, but I want to recognize the coaching staff, Coach Schwicke, Coach Moot, Coach Chavius, Coach Strano, and the JV coaches who also attend all the varsity contests and are integral in the process, Coach Ruby, Coach Cuffey, and Coach Premier. Our captains, Johnny Booker, he's an all-division player. Mark Comutico is an all-county player. Calvin Petitella is an all-county player. He's also a News 12 Scholar athlete, which is very, very rare. He's only the second one in my 12 years. That's an enormous, enormous accomplishment. And Jack Halpern, quarterback, he's an all-division player, Division II Player of the Year, and he was a nominee and the top 7 candidate for the Hanson Award, which is the top player in Suffolk County. So that's our captain. Let's give them a The team finished the season with a 10-2 record and solidified their place in Bellport football history as Suffolk County champions. All their hard work, training, weightlifting, off-season practices, commitment to one another, and personal sacrifice brought our school community together. While I was away dealing with my own challenges at home, the excitement surrounding the success of the team was brought to my attention. In very challenging times as a school community and globally, the team accomplishments, or the accomplishments of one athletic team, brought a sense of pride to our community and created memories that will last a lifetime. Congratulations to the 2021 Conference 2 Suffolk County champions, Bellport varsity football. Congratulations. You can stay there.
Jimmy, I don't know if you want to say anything or not. I know you always put people on the spot.
Yeah, you like
Returning the favor. So why don't we take a shot? Mr. LaRosa and Mr. O'Reilly, why don't you come on up? We could all squeeze in, and I don't know, the board, do you want to try to all get in this shot? I mean, that'd be
Why not?
nice, no?
Do one with and one without?
We'll do one without us and then one with us? All right, that sounds good.
Well, kind of, there you go.
As long as you get my giant head on that screen in the background.
You got it. And I'll do one more. Okay.
Okay. Trustees, Mr. Riley, squeeze in.
I always have to stand next to the
You
slow guy.
guys down on these? You gotta get behind you.
I'm gonna jump.
Perfect. All right, good.
Got it? Is that working?
Yep, you're all in. That's good.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
You guys
Nice job.
great. Congratulations.
Get them every year now.
Congratulations.
So on behalf of the board, we have certificates for everyone. Coach Fabian's going to distribute them. Thank you. Congratulations again. And thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. I really like this guy. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, listen, we're not gonna worry. You guys, you go home and get started. Study, we know you gotta go home.
Good job.
Thank you.
Good job, congrats.
Thanks for having me.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Congratulations. And thank you.
Where'd everybody go?
We're here. I turned you around.
Everybody
Turned you
walked
around
out.
so you could see.
Are the coaches and the players aren't leaving, are they?
Yeah, they are leaving. Oh, did you want to say something?
I do want to say something. I was wondering if the board can make some comments while they're here.
They're gone.
Really?
You want to call them back?
I had a couple of things I wanted to say that I really wanted Coach Fabian to hear. If they're gone, they're gone, but.
Hold on, Mr. Briggs went to see if he could get him.
We got their automatic start.
We're going to pull item C1 minutes from the November meeting from the agenda. Yeah.
Does she know?
Chris, I didn't tell him.
Chris, pull item C1 from the agenda, please. Once she does that, the board will need to refresh.
To refresh, okay.
Just give her a chance to. Thanks for coming back. Mr. Pacini wanted to say a few words.
Thank you. Am I on?
You're on.
First, guys, I apologize. I had to chase you down in the parking lot, but since I didn't get to be in the photo op, I get to grandstand a few minutes on the microphone. But thanks for coming back. And I've been thinking, since I knew the captains and the coaches were going to be here, that there was a lot I really wanted to say about this season particularly, and this team particularly, because there are a lot of things that really kind of struck a chord with me as a community member, a board member, and and a parent that I thought were important. And unfortunately, circumstances, a family emergency pulled me out of town, and I'm stuck in a hotel room. So I appreciate you guys coming back. One of the things that I played football when I was a kid. I love high school sports in general, and I love football, and I'd love to go to the games. And I was really a privilege to be on the sidelines this year and watch this group specifically, how they competed, and what I think, from my observation, is just a great group of young men. And some of those captains, at least two of them, are legacies here in Bellport, where their fathers played football and won championships, and to see the parallel throughout the whole year, and how not just Jack and Cal's dads compared their time years ago to these, but just watching all the alumni from years past come out and support these young men this year was really a privilege to watch. A couple of things, and I usually, after a milestone victory or milestone of the season, I like to send Coach Fabian a note, and obviously I haven't had the opportunity to do that. So this is your note, Coach. There's a couple things I witnessed, right? Putting aside the thousands of community members who came out on Saturdays in the last couple of weeks to watch this team play, two things really struck a chord with me. One of my kids played youth football this year and was supposed to turn his equipment and his uniform, and he begged me to not go and turn it in because he wanted to have his Bellport youth jersey to wear to the LIC game last week. And I was like, wow, 11-year-old kid was like, what I want to represent, and he looks forward to the opportunity he can have to compete at the varsity level and hopefully bring home a county championship and be able to compete for an LIC. And then one day last week, my daughter had a couple of girls in the neighborhood over, and they sat in the basement and they made posters to display at the games. And, being a football player, and sometimes football gets a bad rap. Sometimes machoism, is looked at negatively, and people always say, why does the football team get this, and why does the football team get that? And for a note, I don't think the football team gets much more, if anything more than other teams. But what a football team does to bring out the community, to me, it's special. And I think we saw that this year. And I really wanted to congratulate the boys and the coaches on what they were able to accomplish this year, because it really was special. And I've said this before, being a board member, when you watch the success of our students, is a little bit more special when you know some of the kids. And some of these young men, including some of the young men that are here tonight, I coached some of them or watched them play as youth athletes when they were just 5, 6, 7 years old. To see the progression and where they've come, it has really been special. And especially when you consider some of the outside distractions that this team had to deal with, whether it was the courageous battle Coach Moot had to go through. I'm very happy to see Mr. McIntyre here. We all know what he's gone through. I know Coach Cuffey had some tragedy in his life. Coach Fabian did. It was nice to just celebrate everything that this team has gone through and watch their success. So I don't want to ramble on it anymore because we might be here all night. I just really wanted you to hear my words and give you my heartfelt congratulations on not only your accomplishments on the field, but how well you represented Bellport High School and the entire South Country community. So thank you, and I appreciate you giving me a moment. I appreciate you coming back.
Thank you, Mr. Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Did you hear them, Mr. Pacini? They all said thank you. They're on their way out of the room. Okay. All right. I think that all board members need to refresh their computers. take just a minute to do that. Okay. So now we're going to go back to section C of the agenda, the board consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve item C 1 through 3? A motion by Mr. Parker, a second by Ms. Belize. Discussion, questions? Seeing none, all in favor? All in favor, it's unanimously approved. We're now going to D2, the superintendent's report.
Yes, thank you, President Hayes. I'll begin my report with COVID positive report cases. As of today, we have 193 known positive COVID-19 cases that have been reported to the district. That is up 41 reports from our last meeting. These 193 reports include 45 faculty staff members and 148 students. Also, as of today, the current count of faculty staff in quarantine is 2, and the current count of students in quarantine is 3. Faculty staff is up 2, because it was 0 last time we reported, and 33 is up from 3, so it's up 30.
May I just ask a question on your report?
Sure.
What do you attribute, I think that's a successful report, in spite of the fact that it went up a few case numbers. Considering that the county is over 6% right now with positivity rates, what do you attribute the success of keeping our quarantine levels low?
Our quarantine levels?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's what we're doing in the schools.
And could you just explain just a little bit of that so we can just keep, reminding ourselves what we're doing right?
Sure. We have kids socially distancing whenever possible. In fact, probably more than most districts are doing.
We're enforcing the masks.
We're
indoors,
enforcing the
of course.
masks. To go through a litany of things that we're doing, but we are following all the protocols that we have in place that are in our reopening plan.
And we have
kids
families, and our families are being compliant with us as well and following those protocols? We're not
Yes,
hearing
they
any
are. We have our
backlash?
challenges, but for the most part, yes, everybody is being compliant. We haven't really had any concerns or complaints with regard to what we're putting in place.
Dr. Johnny,
As you know, we've been loosening up guidelines as we've been moving along. You'll hear later tonight that we're going to do some more, bring it back to normal with regard to the hallway lockers. Mr. Trent, you had a...
yes, do you mind just running those numbers by me again?
Sure, which ones did you want? Both, the COVID positives?
Staff?
You'll
positive?
you'll get these in the update tomorrow.
Okay, but you said as of today.
Yeah, okay, so as of today, we have 193 known positive COVID cases reported to the district, total. 45 are faculty and staff, and 148 are students.
And how many students are?
Now remember, those are total cases reported this school year, that's not a current number.
So how many staff are on quarantine as of today?
Right
And how
now,
many
2.
students are on
I
quarantine as
said
of
2,
today?
right? Currently, 2 staff members.
2
That's
staff.
up from 0 from the last report.
And
And the
But down
student,
from hundreds from a year ago.
oh, well, I don't have that number in front of me, but yes, we are in a much better situation than we were a year ago today, yeah.
and how,
And then students, we have 33 on quarantine.
Oh,
And that's
33.
up from 3. We have a lot of students on quarantine right now. And I attribute that not to what we're doing in schools, I attribute that to family gatherings that happen. However, we do have one outlier in that one of our sport teams had a COVID positive where a lot of quarantines came as a result.
and was that like a high school or middle school sports team?
No, it's the high school. It's at the high school. With regard to weekly testing, turning to the New York State weekly testing requirement and looking at the breakdown of employees who have opted out of weekly testing and those that will need to be tested. Currently, 81% of our employees have opted out of weekly testing, while 21% are continuing to weekly test. And I think that's the same number I reported last time. I did make the report to the board. Any other questions on the COVID issues? I mean, I'm going to get probably into it a little bit when I talk a little later, but not right now. Okay, and earlier today, the Industrial Development Agency of the town of Brookhaven had held a second hearing on the application of financial assistance or payment in lieu of taxes for a proposed rail contiguous warehouse and distribution facility on some 271 acres that are within our district and the Longwood School District. I'm not sure if the board is aware of that. You may have seen some emails with regard to that. On behalf of the district, I did share with the IDA that having witnessed and experienced significant community interest and concern over environmental issues in the past, specifically related to the Brookhaven landfill, the district had respectfully requested that the project go through appropriate reviews by federal, state, and local authorities, and that in that review, our community residents should also be included in the discussions and have a say in that matter. Moving on, I'm happy to report that the district is in the process of finalizing our SO agreement with the Suffolk County Police Department, and we continue to maintain an excellent relationship with the officers that are assigned to our school, and in fact, Inspector Silver at the 5th Precinct. In addition to the relationship we built with the outside agencies, we have a number of systems in place, such as our keyless door entry and ID card access for faculty and staff, our security cameras in our schools, security cameras on our buses, save hotlines installed at each of our buildings, the Rave Pack button application for our administrators, and then, of course, most importantly, our excellent student support personnel in each of our schools that are supporting our students, their families, and also our staff. I just want to re-emphasize to the board that health, safety, and security continues to be our top priority for the district. The district has recently learned that winter track meets for Suffolk County were postponed due to cost increase passed on to Section 11 from the host site. My understanding is that the cost increase was significant and would ultimately need to be passed on to participating schools. As a result, Section 11 is currently negotiating a reduction in those fees and is hopeful the matter will be resolved with the schedule resuming indoors shortly. However, in the meantime, and I just learned this before coming into the meeting, Section 11 has constructed a schedule for dual meet outdoor events until the matter gets resolved. Those schedules will be communicated to participants through, obviously, participating schools' athletic departments. In an effort to continue welcoming spectators to our indoor athletic events while minimizing the risk to all, we have developed a plan called Winter Sports Risk Minimization Strategies for both Belport High School and Belport Middle School. In the plan, specific seating areas will be designated for home fans, away fans, and students, depending upon the gymnasium. We are encouraging a limit of 3 spectators per player with restrictions of access if and when the gym reaches capacity, and naturally masks must be worn at all times at our events. The plan will be implemented for our home indoor events at both the high school and the middle school, and we will continually reevaluate the plan so we would make adjustments if needed throughout the season. Based on student safety concerns received from Belport Middle School staff observing student arrivals and dismissals, Dr. Coastland recently sent a message to BMS families asking parents and guardians to refrain from making U-turns or 3-point turns on Kramer Street during student drop-off and pickup. I'd like to join Dr. Colson in making this request as well. In addition, we request that students not be dropped off or picked up on the opposite side of the street to avoid students having to cross through traffic to get to the schools. And we obviously thank you all for your anticipated cooperation. And as you know, administration routinely reviews our efforts to move closer to normal, prioritizing keeping our children, faculty, and staff safe at school. As promised, we began distributing PE locker assignments to those students who requested one. our current reports indicate that less than half of our students have requested the use of a PE locker. We have been reviewing data for any uptick in COVID-positive reports and/or close contact quarantines that may have resulted from the use of PE lockers and/or family gatherings during Thanksgiving. And as you just heard, there has definitely been an uptick in these reports. However, we cannot attribute them to the use of the PE lockers. The reports are more than likely from family gatherings, with the exception, as I mentioned earlier, of a number of reports that appear to be a result of close contact in a sport team. With that in mind, and in an effort to move closer to normal, we will distribute hall lockers to high school and middle school students who request one. Access to the lockers will only be permitted before first period and at the end of the school day. This will provide a place for students to store their coat and items for after-school activities during the day rather than carrying them throughout the day. However, accommodations have already been made for large items such as instruments, sport gear at the building level. We will begin taking student requests at the beginning Monday, December 20th, and expect implementation when we return from winter recess. And lastly, I'm happy to report that beginning tomorrow with the middle school holiday concert, we will begin streaming our concerts. More information will come out from the schools, but if you don't see it because of the late announcement, please reach out to the school or music department directly to see how to connect. And that is all the announcements that I have, President Hayes.
Thank
And I see Mr. Turner.
Yes, I have a question. How are you notifying the community that lockers are accessible to students who
That'll
request?
be through the buildings will do that.
Okay, are they gonna do like a robocall or something in?
I'm not sure how the buildings will do it with the community, but they will do it with the kids through a Google form
Okay,
to
cool.
make requests.
Gotcha.
Mr. Piccini?
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Pacini.
Dr. Gianni, did you made a comment about spectators at sports at 3 per person. Is that going into effect, or did you say that's being encouraged?
No, we're encouraging the 3. Yeah, we're not counting people as they come in at this point.
We're not at this point. Okay.
Right.
And different question in the same regards. With spectators, since they're not students, are we able to I don't know how to put this, have vaccinated and unvaccinated sections and things like that? We've seen some pro sports teams are doing that. I mean, are we able to do that? I know we can't with general student population, but for events, are we able to do that? That might be something for council.
I don't know the answer to that. And we honestly never even thought about it. I mean, that would require us checking vaccination status at the door. I don't know if that's legally permissible, and I'm looking at council, and I'm being advised by the nod that it's not legally permissible.
Even if they're not students, though, they're public, we can't, and I know it's controversial, but I just didn't know if we were able to say, all right, if you're vaccinated, sit over here, and, you wear your mask, but we don't have to limit, spacing. I didn't know if there's different. So if council's saying no, that's fine, but maybe we can explore it and just see if it's an option to ensure that as we go through the winter season that, some fans can still attend our games. So we don't have to spend time on it now, but we wonder if it's something we can explore.
Okay, thank you.
But I believe that the mask requirement is still in effect regardless of
Oh, yes.
vaccination status.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm not doubting that. I'm just wondering if, we're able to say this section of stands is for vaccinated, and they have to wear masks, and then, maybe another section. Yeah, I just don't want to see us, I would hate to see us be forced to go into limiting the number of spectators. I was in the gym for the first basketball game. Having a son who was a basketball player who played in front of an empty gyms last year, it was a wonderful experience last week to be in the gym, and I know some administrators and staff were concerned. There was a lot of people in the gym, and I get it, I really do. But on the flip side, the positivity and the wonderful environment that it was for the students and the families and community members that were able to come is something I'd like to see if we can preserve by thinking outside the box.
I'll review the
If-
status
if
of
need
that
be.
and get back.
Okay, council indicated he'll review the status of that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions about the report?
No, thank you.
Seeing
I'm
none?
done. Back to you.
Okay, trustee and advisory committee reports. Mr. Parker.
I don't really have any. We didn't have a meeting of sorts, but I did want to make a comment. That is that oftentimes things are very controversial. And the community sometimes has a tendency to think that we're not listening. But when you hear Dr. Gianni speak about the lockers being made available to the kids, to the students and whatnot, it just shows you that we are listening and that things are being done. And it's just positive. Thank you.
Mr. Trent?
Yeah, just very quickly, last night I attended the boys JV basketball game, Buckle Middle School concert, and also the Health and Safety Committee. Where in the committee I just suggested that, when the buildings meet for their air quality meetings, so for those of you who don't know, a couple of years ago, the building started to meet as a staff to talk about air quality issues. They have they have minutes and they submit the minutes to the committee and we review them and just talk about the things that they talked about. So during last night's meeting, I just suggested that they open up the conversation to talk about more than just air or air quality related issues, just building health issues in general. So I asked Mr. Briggs if he can look into that and he said that he would. So that's just a synopsis of the meeting from last night, and that's all I have.
Ms. Felice?
I just have one request, that you, as president, look into setting up the meeting for the legislative committee. That is our only committee that hasn't met at all this year. And thank you to Dr. Gianni for sending representation to the hearing at Brookhaven Town. There are a number of environmental issues that I thought we were going to be able to discuss at the legislative committee, as well as addressing the IDA payment in lieu of taxes list, and to make sure that our district is not being shortchanged. So none of that can go forward from a board's perspective until we get that meeting up and off the ground.
I think there are 3 members of our subcommittee, our legislative committee. And is there a way that the 3 of you can coordinate a date as opposed to going back and forth?
We were asked for
I can
dates
make
back
a
in
comment that
October.
might add some clarification, if that's okay. I had intended to set a legislative committee meeting some time ago. I had emailed the committee a few weeks ago, but unfortunately the email was stuck in my outbox and I didn't realize it until I was prompted by Ms. Felice in an email last week. And obviously I've had some distractions this week to address it, so I do apologize. We had discussed some of the state level issues, and after speaking with aides in the legislators' offices, and this was part of the email that should have been sent to the committee, they had asked that we wait till, a bit longer. Specifically, we were talking about meeting before Election Day, and that just wasn't going to happen, and they've asked to wait until after the holidays. The legislative season at the state level really heats up at the end of January and goes through February and March. So from a state level, there is still plenty of time to organize ourselves at the state level. As far as the local level, I don't know that this issue specifically that's being discussed with the pilot payment or pilot program to Winter Brothers has been brought up to the legislative committee. If it has, then I missed it, I apologize. But there's nothing that prevents the board on its own from addressing this. This is, in my opinion, specific to the IDA and pilot payments. this is not necessarily something for the legislative committee and more something for the board as a whole, since it is more immediate and it is, some feel it may be impactful to our finances. I don't share that opinion, but as a board, if we want to talk about it, we certainly have that ability. And if the board is going to make a statement, it certainly does not need the legislative committee to do that.
Well, I don't have the email in front of me, but it was at the request of the president that these items be discussed at the legislative committee.
Okay, and that's possible, Ms. Felice, that I have missed it. But again, in my opinion, a topic like that should be discussed with the board and not necessarily the legislative committee, since it is more immediate. We need to be a little bit more nimble if that's what
Well,
the board
I was
wants.
waiting for the committee to, all right.
See, I see two issues in what you've said and I think what Ms. Felice is raising. And one is the issue of pilots overall. And I think that is something that the legislative committee, perhaps in conjunction with the various school boards associations, could look into. Because it wouldn't be just, it wouldn't just affect our district, the existence of pilots, it would be all school districts. And whether or not the school districts are, losing out on monies that they could be getting that would be for the benefit of students. So I think that is something that y'all could look into. With regard to the particular IDA issue today, Dr. Gianni has reported on his statement on behalf of the district. On behalf of the board, whether we would make a statement or not is something that the board would have to decide. And, and so that in terms of pilots, that's one issue. In terms of health and safety and environmental issues, it's another issue, but they are kind of combined because of this project. So I thought it would be helpful to have the legislative committee give the entire board guidance about procedurally what it's appropriate for the board to address and how do you go about doing it. And
I guess if I can respond to that, I'm sorry, if you weren't finished, I apologize.
go ahead.
I'm sorry, I want to make sure I didn't cut you off. It is kind of, just so everybody knows, it is kind of hard to get the timing when you're remote, so forgive me if I interrupt. I didn't really want to say it. I have some concerns with this topic and how it relates to the board for a number of reasons. And that's why I personally think, and maybe I should have articulated this sooner, that it should be a board discussion. I feel, in my personal opinion, that some community members are trying to use our board as a weapon, a political weapon against this initiative. And I could speak more in depth, whether it's now or later. But if we're going to talk about, and I've seen some letters and I've seen some Facebook activity that talks about, lost revenue for the district. In this specific case, and I may not have all the information, but I think I have a good understanding of it, this piece of property is adjacent to the landfill. The only way that the district is going to receive revenue is if they build homes there. And I don't think, with everything that's going on in the landfill, I don't think anybody's advocating to put homes and property adjacent to the landfill. So, this might be, and anybody who knows my history here, I have a major issue with the IDA and the tax abatements, and myself and some other administrators have fought the town on this for many years. But there's a flip side to that to say, well, if we don't get a pilot payment, we're probably not going to get anything. So something is better than nothing, unless there is an effort to promote development, residential development on this property, which I don't think is what anybody wants.
And I don't mean to cut you off, but that's precisely why I wanted the benefit of the legislative committee helping us focus on the issue. Is the issue pilots, or is the issue the project and how, if in any way it's appropriate for the board to take any position or action on either of those. So I think it bears further discussion, and it probably should be an agenda item on a future meeting so that we can address it. And in the meantime, the three of you, if you can select a date to have your meeting, and, don't, and then, and if you have to do it by Zoom, I imagine there's a way to facilitate that.
Well, aren't all committee meetings being done by Zoom now
They
anyway?
can be.
They are, right,
Also,
at present, right?
Audit's in person, I believe audit's in person.
What's in person?
Audit committee's in person.
The audit committee's in person? Okay. Well, either way that we can get the best attendance, but, with all due respect, there's a lot of material out there, and I don't, allege to know all of it, or having read through all of it. I know I'm copying all, the reports in an attempt to discuss it with the board, so that we wouldn't take up board time to discuss these issues. So I'm a little taken back at the fact that there were calls made to legislative offices before we even discussed which direction that we were going in. And no one is suggesting that we were going to meet with the legislators first. We were going to discuss what we thought was going to be an appropriate agenda for this district. And then after that, we would incorporate our legislators. And it doesn't only pertain to the state, it pertains locally as well. So, again,
Well,
this is a
let
committee.
me clarify.
May I finish, Mr. Pacini?
Sure.
So again, we had a committee that was asked to be started several years back. Took a little while to get it off the road, to get it launched. And then we had, a kickoff year last year. We kept the same committee from July 1st, when we started the new school year. And we still, every other committee has met at least twice already. In fact, they're going on their third meeting, I think. Yeah, the third meeting. This committee hasn't met. We were asked to give dates. We gave dates back in October. All I'm asking is, could we please get it moving in the right direction? Because I spent a lot of time at legislative-related seminars to be able to share this information with the rest of the committee. And it's doing us no good the further away we get from that material. So could we please just fulfill our promise and get this meeting off the ground?
Ms. Hayes, I'm just going to clarify a couple things. I did ask for dates from the Legislative Committee back in October. Ms. Felice offered up 2 dates, and there were a number of people who couldn't make those 2 dates. So to make sure that everybody could be there, it wasn't going to work in October. I made it clear to the committee that I would be reaching out to the legislators to get timelines on when they would like to meet with the board, the state legislators, specifically State Senator Wyke and State Assemblyman DeStefano, in regards to the legislative priorities of the New York State School Board Association and the Nassau-Suffolk School Board Association, which we talked about on at least 2 occasions at a board meeting. So that's what the immediate task was for the legislative
Let me
committee.
make a suggestion. If y'all,
Where I am remiss is in, like I said, after hearing from the legislators that they preferred to wait a bit, I didn't communicate that to the committee because the email just didn't go for whatever reason. And Ms. Felice's prompt last week made me realize it, and obviously I've been a little distracted this week. So again, my apologies for that, but the legislative committee, in my opinion, like I said, there wasn't really much. I know the landfill issue has been discussed. Again, I just said I think that's a board discussion first, since it's more immediate, and I think
we've
it's
got
a little bit more.
we have an organizational issue that I'm hearing right here.
We have a communication
One
issue,
is,
a lack of.
one is a scheduling of this subcommittee, but in listening to you, what I'm wondering is it appropriate to not just a subcommittee of the board, but rather a regular advisory committee like we do on some of our other issues? and we could put these topics in and then have the meeting scheduled the same way the other committees are?
I think I want to agree with Ms. Belize and Mr. Piccini right now. Let's just get the legislative committee meeting. I don't think we need another committee to look at issues for the board. I think our four advisory committees are functional and work very well. I think we just need to get a meeting for the legislative committee on the rolls.
Okay. So,
And I'll be happy to facilitate that to happen.
okay, I'm just telling you from experience of being in the middle of trying to schedule with multiple people, when you're adding one more person in, it's like extra
Well, I'm going to
layers.
delegate it to
Yeah.
Ms. Costa, who is the facilitator for the committee, so don't worry, there won't be an added person.
And I was not made aware that the dates that I offered didn't work for the rest of the committee. I was never made aware of that.
Okay. So let's start from tonight, that there will be coordination of the meeting, and we'll call it as soon as possible. And I hope that you'll look at it, and using like this IDA pilots issue as an example, look at it both as an issue that maybe needs to, or could be addressed, at different levels of government in order to make things better for school district financing. And then also take up the topic, because it is of concern to everybody, I think, who lives in the South Country School District, the status of our environmental issues. So if you could think about adding that to your agenda for your meeting, I'd like to hear what you have to report back.
Okay, let's memorialize that, so that 3 months, we're not having the same discussion.
Okay, but I
We
think
didn't know what our charge was. We were clear on what our charge was.
did I just hear Dr. Chiani say that he was delegating to Ms. Costa the responsibility of scheduling a meeting?
You heard correctly.
Thank you.
Okay,
Much appreciated.
okay. So,
I just want to make clear my personal issues as a board member and a member of the legislative committee. I think the landfill issue should be discussed by this board and not the legislative committee. If you want to discuss pilots and IDAs and the future of that, then I'm fine with it. But the current issue should be discussed by the board.
no,
Were we
but
not
the
just given a charge?
environmental issues, what we need from you is advice about what, if anything, is the role of the school board in that. So that would be part of what you discussed.
Again, I understand what you're saying. I think because of the history of the issue with the landfill and the hot bus and the political issue it has become, I believe this should be discussed by the board and not the legislative committee. I think the legislative committee should be left to issues specifically that impact education funding, state level. That's my opinion. And if I gave a different impression, or if I misinterpreted something, then I'll apologize. But again, the landfill issues and the local town issues, I think, should be discussed by the board, not the legislative committee. That's just my opinion.
If I just may say, Mr. Piccini, try not to label it the landfill issue. There's an overall environmental issue that I believe the president is pointing to. And we know that to be true because when there was consideration for expanding the landfill to accept Asheville, we made a request to the town, to our local town of Brookhaven, to include a member of this board, of the South Country School District, on that advisory committee, and they did that. And that committee came up with a recommendation. So we can't, and that was specific to the landfill. So we can't say that this board has no interest or no business discussing the landfill. We do. It's an environmental issue that's been around far too long. We made an appeal to the town, which they honored. They put a member of our Board of Trustees on the committee that we approved. That person went to all those meetings during COVID time. It was all remote meetings, as I recall. Is that right, Mr. Parker? They were mostly remote
In the
meetings,
end,
correct?
yes.
And he gave his report at the conclusion of the committee's findings. So to say that we shouldn't engage, with all due respect, I think that's your personal opinion, but on behalf of the board, we've already taken action on behalf of our district and how it affects our district. There's nothing political about it. If people are getting sick and people are getting harmed, we as a district have an obligation to do something about it, and we already have, and we're stalling the process by not meeting. So I don't want to take up any more time. We have a very full
We're
agenda.
now,
Hold on,
We're
I need to clarify.
scheduling a meeting.
Hold on, I need to clarify my comments, because I didn't say it wasn't a board issue. I said I didn't think it was a legislative issue. I think the Board of Education, the people in this room, should be the ones to discuss that. That's all I said, because I disagree with you. I do believe it's a political issue. I believe it's become a political hot button issue. I believe there's a lot of false information circulating, and I think this board, you were on the board and president when we went through everything that we went through with Frank B. Long and the landfill and everything else. I think it should be handled a little bit different. I think you remember how difficult that was. So I'm not suggesting that it's not an issue for the board to be involved in and discuss. I just think it should be left up to, this specific topic should be left up, to us. So that's just to clarify.
We're going to have a very long night here. So when you want to go back to 2017 and the issues surrounding Frank P. Long, this board took a very strong initiative by authorizing, I believe it was well over $100,000, probably it was $113,000 as I remember, in environmental testing of one particular school to ensure that we didn't have, there were no harmful effects happening at that school. That's not to say there weren't still issues happening around the, in and around the district. Now we had a proposal to add to the landfill that would have affected 2 more schools. Our conclusion at that time in 2017, and all of that testing that we had done, was that there was nothing in the school that was harmful. That doesn't mean to say that there isn't now. I was comfortable and I was secure in our decision at the time, much to the chagrin of a number of people. But I still ride around in my car with that report that is probably about 6 inches thick, if I ever have to refer to it. I have never let go of that report. I still have it to this day. And that is the decision that we made at the time, specific to the landfill. So if you felt differently about the charge of the legislative committee, then we should have discussed it before now. If you thought the discussion should have been at the board, because I have brought it up in other meetings, in other reports that I have given, because I'm trying to stay aware. And we all have a lot of things going on. I have a lot of distractions with my family right now, which is why I've only copied these reports and haven't read through them all. But there is a lot there, and I don't want to miss it. So that's why I would request the assistance of the help of the committee, so that it's not just left to the 1 or 2 people that are monitoring the situation. We can bring the committee back in, because they were very supportive of the agenda that we had set forward last year, and we just need to keep going.
Can I interject something? I don't think the 2 of you are saying things that are completely opposed to each other. I want to pull it back and tell you how I see it. And that is, you can evaluate what is the appropriate role for the board itself to play in issues like this, and how best to present it. And I would like to have your recommendation, because the 3 of you were named to this subcommittee. We now have it that with Ms. Costa's scheduling assistance, there will be a meeting scheduled. And with that, I would like to see this move forward. Can we have a meeting of the minds on that right now?
Yes, agreed.
Okay. Yes.
I just would like to know the date that they come up with.
Okay, so once the date is scheduled, if you could, just confirm the date and maybe copy all board members just so they know. Okay, so let's see, how far did we get? Reports.
I think we
All
were,
right.
Mr. Pacini wasn't asked for his report.
Do you have a report, Mr. Pacini, for any committee meetings you want to report about?
No, I do not, thank you.
Okay, for my report, I would just call the board's attention to the fact that the minutes of all meetings are posted, or the ones that were held last night, I doubt they're up yet, but they'll be up soon. And I did just want to comment, though, that I was, this kind of goes into an item next, which we're not to public commentary yet, but we have no comments. Then I'll merge it in. What I've been doing is trying to keep track of any email that I've gotten, to the board from community members, parents about topics, and just generally announce the topics and the emails since the last meeting. And of course, all of you have been copied on all of these, but it's to remind you. We had one dealing with a quarantine issue, and that was sent to, of course, Dr. Gianni or his designee, and it appeared to be an issue with regard to a particular individual under quarantine, so that would not be appropriate for us to discuss, but that's how that would be handled. We had also one email from a community member with regard to the sign discussion, and that person expressed opposition to the idea. And we had a couple of emails inquiring about the availability of having some kind of video or recording or live streaming of any of our concerts that are happening now. So, and those actually came in this morning, I think following the middle school concert last night, which by the way was really nice. And by late this afternoon, you were able to indicate that the tech people were already looking at it. Do you know if there's a resolution? Is it possible? Will it happen? Or
No, we're doing it, starting tomorrow.
starting tomorrow, definitely. Okay. So good. And my comment about the concert from last evening is I added up the number of participants, and it was more than 200 students. And assuming there'll be a similar number on Thursday, because they did a bifurcated concert schedule, that would mean 400 out of approximately, I think it's 900 at that building.
Yeah, a little over.
A little over 9. So it sounds, doing the math roughly, it's like 40% of our student body is participating in the music program. And if you looked at their faces, they all felt a very good sense of accomplishment for what they'd learned and what they were able to show us. So I'm really grateful to our music faculty, the building people, everybody who's made this possible. So if you can let them know I said that.
I will, and I'm sure they're watching. You
Oh.
probably said it yourself.
Okay.
Well, I just wanted to add also, since I was in attendance, I was very pleased to see how, when I looked in the crowd, there were spaces between families in every row, and everyone, had their mask on, and I was just very, very glad to see that, very glad.
That's nice to hear.
Something happened with the viewing there.
Oh.
We have you and not Trish.
Well, he had indicated he may have to jump in and out, but let me see, I think I control that here.
Okay.
No, he's yeah, he's there. There you go.
There he is.
I'm back, sorry about that.
Oh,
I just got a phone call, sorry.
We thought it was on our end, so anyway,
Sorry, it was me.
we're now up to F, Dr. Gianni.
We're up to no public, so we're good?
No public.
Okay, great. Our first item for this evening is a presentation regarding the dual language program, which is currently in grades kindergarten through 5 at Brookhaven and Frank P. Long. Making the presentation this evening is Ms. Tetuan, our Director of ELL Bilingual and World Languages, and introducing Ms. Tetuan
Oh, I'm sorry.
is Ms. Doyle,
Jump ahead.
our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum
Wow.
Instruction and Accountability. Ms. Doyle.
I didn't tell Ms. Tetman.
Sorry about that.
It's quite
I would just like to thank Dr. Gianni and the board for supporting the dual language program. I have experience from another district with dual language, and I am a big believer in success and the amazing experience and opportunity that it provides for students. So I'm happy that we provide this for our students. I'd just like to thank Dr. Raymond and Ms. Brzezinski for their support of the program in their buildings. And of course, our Director of ENL Bilingual and World Languages, Monica Tetuan, who is very passionate about this work. And we're just excited to see where we're going in the future. So I'm excited for you to hear what she has to say tonight. So thank you.
I just have a quick question. How common is this program, dual language, in other districts on Long Island? If
How
you know.
common?
Yeah, is there something
There
that
are a handful
everyone
on
is
Long
doing?
Island.
I think there's just a hand. Ms.
Yeah.
Tetuan may have.
Yeah, you'll have a
she
better
might
idea.
even know better, I think.
When we were looking at, maybe there were like 7 on Long Island?
7 or 8,
Yeah,
I'd say,
something like
you know,
that.
in Nassau and Suffolk County, so not that many, not as many as I'm a Smithtown district person, and I would have loved to have this program for my students, so it's not that common. So it's really, I think, a jewel. Thank you, by the way, for the introduction. Dr. Gianni, board, thank you so much for inviting me. This is my 6th year as the director of these programs, and it's the first time I've been invited to speak, so I'm really excited and grateful for the opportunity. So yeah, it's definitely unique and special in this district.
Point it this way, Ms. Tetuan, I think it's there, right?
Is there another microphone where she is? I'm sensing a little feedback. Do you hear that?
Like
She should be pulling in from
Yeah.
the
Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, but every so often there's feedback.
Yeah, no, these are the only mics that we have in the building,
Okay.
or in the room.
Okay, so we have the dual language program here in the district in K through 5th grade. And it is a two-way dual language program. I'll just give you an overview. By two-way, we mean that the program consists of both English dominant and English language learners. And the goal of the program is to provide instruction in 50% English and 50% Spanish, with the intention of ensuring proficiency, academic proficiency in both languages for the students involved. So we have 2 different models in the district, but they're both two-way dual language models. So we have what we call a side-by-side model in grades K through 3. The dual language program is housed at Brookhaven Elementary, or Lakeland School. And the side-by-side model is basically designed so that we have an English-speaking teacher that provides instruction exclusively in English in one room, and a Spanish-speaking teacher that provides instruction exclusively in Spanish in another room. There are 2 classes of students, and the students switch rooms halfway in the middle of their day and receive instruction in both English and Spanish each day. This is a sample, I don't know if you can see it, this is a sample side-by-side schedule of students. So this is a 2nd grade sample. We have Ms. Nolde, who is the English teacher, and she has the blue group, which would be 1 class of students, and that's her homeroom. And then we have Miss Moreno's group, which is the red group, and she has that group of students in her homeroom. If we look at Miss Noli's blue side, her students begin the day with specials and remain with her for instruction in English. In this sample, it would be a reader's workshop followed by writer's workshop, phonics in English, and then lunch. Miss Noli's students would return after lunch and go to Miss Moreno's class, where they would begin their Spanish instruction for the day. In this sample, it would be math, science, and NO, which is phonics in Spanish. And on Miss Moreno's side, her group would begin the day with specials as well. They would begin in her class in Spanish instruction with math, followed by science, followed by phonics in Spanish. And then after lunch, her group would go to Miss Noldy's room, where they would receive instruction in English, in reader's workshop, writer's workshop, and phonics. That's an example.
So they're
Yes.
learning the same materials in English and then in Spanish?
So they're alternating, right? So this group would be doing, yes, they would be doing, for that week or that unit, they would be doing readers and writers workshop in English, and math, science, and phonics in Spanish.
But they're not, it's not the same material.
Okay.
No. Okay, it's a little confusing, but I thought this would help kind of lay it out for you guys. Okay. So we have a standalone model in grades 4 and 5. The standalone model is one class. The class still consists of approximately half, English dominant and English language learners. The difference is that this model, there is one teacher that is elementary certified with a bilingual extension, and the one teacher provides instruction in both English and Spanish. And that's at Frank Pilon. So this is just a breakdown. The dual language program currently serves 205 students, and you'll note that I've just broken it down by grade level, reminded you of the model that's used at that grade level. The teachers, so for example, in kindergarten, side-by-side model, we have Ms. Leslie Taylor, who is the Spanish side teacher, Ms. Merrill Banks, who is the teacher who provides instruction in English, and the kindergarten dual language program services 44 students.
Okay, could you stop on there? I want to just point something out to the board. So you see the two models, the side-by-side and the standalone, and you see the standalones in the later grades. That's a result, that was when we first started the program, right? Those youngsters were in kindergarten at one point. It was a standalone program because we only had enough students to hold one class. As the program grew in popularity, more students came to the program, and we were able to offer the side-by-side program. That's why you see standalone at the later grades, but not in the earlier grades.
Yeah.
And eventually we will have no standalone.
We also switched to this, excuse me.
Do you want me to wait to the end or ask question as we go along?
No, I just wanted to just piggyback on
Go right
Dr.
ahead.
Johnny's. We also switched to this side-by-side model because it would allow us to provide services to more students. As our L population grew, we wanted to ensure that we were providing our Ls with this option because it's also part of the ENL program, right? So that was another reason why. And when we did our research, we found that the side-by-side model really gave us the opportunity to balance the English and Spanish. It's really difficult when you have one teacher teaching both because you always tend to lean where the assessments are, which are in English, and because, it's an English world. But when you have a teacher that's exclusively devoted to Spanish, then we really have an opportunity to build that side up in terms of curriculum, in terms of assessment, which is what we've done. Yes.
So with this standalone program, as we grew from our kindergartners, as the superintendent indicated, did we have teachers already certified to teach in Spanish, or did we have to ready them before this?
We hired teachers specifically.
For this?
In some cases, when we were able to, we hired in advance in preparation for the year that came, but it's been more difficult to do.
I think there was one year we were ahead
Ahead
of
of
the
it,
game.
yeah. That was nice. Not the case. It's very difficult to find qualified bilingual teachers.
And the beauty of the side-by-side also is that you have double the students, you service more ENL students, and you still only have one bilingual teacher and one English-speaking teacher. So the certification issue that sometimes causes excess isn't there.
So it's a win-win-win,
Yeah.
for sure. It's a great move.
May I inquire, the students in the standalone programs in grade 4 and 5, have they all or most of them been in our dual language program from the beginning, or has there been some fluctuation in terms of attendance?
There has been some fluctuation, particularly in those grades, not much. I would say that the 5th grade group is the one that fluctuated the most because it was our first group, and typically that's what you find, that is the group that fluctuates the most. We still have a group of 18 students in there, but you'll see that in the breakdown that that's the group that has more L's in it, and that's because as our numbers diminished, and new entrants came in, we put them in that program.
Okay.
Okay. So this is a pie chart just to show you the breakdown of K-5 in terms of non-ENL students and ENL students that are provided service in this program. And I was happy to see when we did this that it's pretty 50-50. So again, kindergarten to Brookhaven Elementary. I wanted to show you the breakdown of ENL students and non-ENL students. So this is the side-by-side model, so it's 2 classes. So Ms. Taylor's homeroom has 23 students in it. 11 are ENL students, 12 are non-ENL. Ms. Banks is the English teacher, and her homeroom has 21 students. 9 of them are ENL, 12 are non-ENL, and I took the liberty of adding some beautiful student work on some of these slides. It was actually really fun to gather it. They're really producing beautiful stuff. Okay, and here's our first grade side by side. We have Ms. Baeza. Her homeroom has 20 students in it. 9 are ENL, 11 are non-ENL. And we have Ms. Tara Seaford, who is the teacher on the English side. Her homeroom has 21 students in it, 11 are ENL, 10 are non-ENL. Some of their work. Second grade, we have Ms. Dinorca Moreno, who's the Spanish side teacher, and her homeroom has 20 students, 9 are ENL, 11 are non-ENL. And Stephanie Noldi is the teacher on the English side. Her homeroom has 21 students. That was the sample schedule that I showed you. Number of ENL students is 9. Number of non-ENL students is 12. It's a picture of Miss Moreno teaching her class and a student rating sample.
Another question?
Yes?
The, do you find that the ENL students learn more from or just as much or anything? How beneficial is it for the ENL student to work with the non-ENL?
Well, it's a great benefit, particularly in the side-by-side model, and I'll tell you why. Quite often, L students in an all-English classroom don't get to feel what it's like to be the expert in the room. But anytime they're on the Spanish side, they are the language experts in the room. So they have an opportunity to really take on the role of, partner and teacher. So that's one of, I think, the great benefits for our L students in this program.
Thank you.
Okay. So grade 3, we have Miss Oliva, who is on the Spanish side. Her homeroom has 20 students in it. 9 of them are ENL students, 11 are non-ENL. And we have Miss Kelly Abarowski, who's on the English side. Her homeroom has 19 students in it. 10 are ENL and 9 are non-ENL. There's some kiddos on their Chromebooks. And then at Frank P. Long, as I mentioned, is where we have our standalone. Ms. Diana Santos is an elementary teacher with a bilingual extension. She teaches in both English and Spanish. She has one class of 22 students, 11 ENL, 11 non-ENL. And finally, Frank P. Long, 5th grade. Ms. Tursanovic is our elementary teacher with a bilingual extension, teaches students in both English and Spanish, one class of 18 students, 11 ENL students, and 7 non-ENL students.
I have a question.
Yes.
what will our students in this program be doing next year?
Good question.
Oh, okay.
So typically, when we started off the conversation talking about where these programs exist, where they do exist, the program typically concludes in grade 5. There's 1 or 2 exceptions where it kind of skips 6th grade and starts in 7th grade because that's when language starts typically. We are currently exploring enrichment options for these students because we feel that clearly they're linguistically very special, and we want to make sure that we're continuing to provide them with opportunities to progress in their academic literacy development in that Spanish language. So we'll let you know as soon as we know what we're doing, but we're exploring
Thank
those
you.
options now, Ms. Hayes.
The reason I asked that was to follow up on what you said at the beginning
Yeah.
about how we're one of relatively few school districts who are offering programs like this that benefit our students so magnificently. And I'm proud to see that, and I just wanted to see how this would fit into
Sure.
planning for subsequent years so that we could keep that momentum going.
So we, not only do we need to consider how to provide these students with an appropriate language educational space, but we need to consider what we're going to provide them with in 7th and 8th grade, because what we currently have will not support where they are, right? Because in 7th and 8th grade, we begin with a Spanish 1A and a Spanish 1B, which would be way below where they would be. So there's a lot of planning to do in terms
So
of.
that would be way below both the I'll call them English-speaking students as well as the ENL students.
Correct. Correct.
So that would not be appropriate for either, for anybody who participated in this
Absolutely.
program.
Because, you know, it's something to speak Spanish, it's another thing to be educated in academic Spanish, right? Big difference. I learned Spanish at home, but I've never studied Spanish a day in my life in school. I took French in school. So even our Spanish dominant students, right, have an academic proficiency that we want to continue to nurture and nourish. So that's why it's important for both. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Spanish curriculum and resources that we utilize, because again, one of the major advantages of the side-by-side model was that it gave us the opportunity to really focus on strengthening that Spanish side. So it became a true 50-50 model. So what I wanted to mention is that all of the ENL students in the dual language program receive 1 period of ENL service per day. Okay? So that's the support they get in addition to being in this great language environment. So we use the Estrellitas program in K1, and that is the equivalent of our foundations or phonics program on the English side. So when our students are in kindergarten and 1st grade, phonics in Spanish, they're using the Estrellitas program. Pretty popular in the dual language programs that exist. And then when it comes to supporting a balanced literacy approach, which we do on the English side, we utilize the American Reading Company's resources. It's called the Non-Enl. It provides a framework for reading assessment and also the resources that are needed for independent reading, as well as small group instruction. The program is really great because it's leveled, it's divided into different colors, and each color represents a set of skills that are required in order to move on to the next skill level. So teachers can easily utilize this assessment tool to determine what skills are still required for the student to master before they move on to the next level. So it's a great way for the teacher to pinpoint what needs to be focused on, and they use this information to create those small groups so that those skills can be addressed specifically. And these resources include level libraries, both digital and hard copies in the classrooms. When it comes to Spanish, math resources, we use the same resources that we use in English, but the Spanish version. Apple Focus has Spanish resources, and that's what our students use when they are engaged in Spanish math instruction. And likewise, we have Amplify Science, that is the curriculum for our English-speaking students, English-dominant classrooms, and we use that same resource, but in Spanish. So when our dual language students are engaged in Spanish science instruction, they're using Amplify in Spanish. And same with our social studies materials. Our district curriculum is the Putnam Westchester BOCES curriculum, and we use the Spanish resources from that curriculum to support the social studies instruction in Spanish. So, teachers I meet with teachers regularly. I have monthly meetings with the dual language teachers, and they are K-5 meetings, so we bridge both buildings. Typically, those meetings include the principals, and they include the literacy coaches. Literacy coaches are really important when it comes to ensuring that we're upping the quality of that Spanish side. So they're constantly, we're constantly working with them to ensure that we're getting materials to help support that balance. And our dual language teachers are teachers of ELs, like all teachers are teachers of ELs, and they participate in our district-wide ENL professional development. Dr. Andrea Honingsfeld. They have also been receiving professional development to help support the use of those resources that I mentioned from the American Reading Company. We've done that for the past 4 years, and we'll be doing that again this year. And another thing that we do is, as we move the program up a year, we provide teachers with an opportunity to work during the summer so that they can align their work. So the 3rd grade teacher works with the incoming 4th grade teacher during the summer so that they can align their resources and have a scope and sequence that works best for the progression of that student's language growth. Oh. And we've been, as part of one of our initiatives here in the district, we've been focused a lot on the use of anchor charts as a way to provide students with supports that will help them work independently on their own, right? Building student agency. And what I found walking around is that we are seeing these improvements in the dual language classroom as well. They're moving along with the rest of the classrooms in terms of what it is that we're looking for as we initiate these changes. So they're very much in step with what it is that we're trying to accomplish in all classrooms. Dual language is doing it very nicely. Got a little bilingual there for you. Thank you.
Gracias.
De nada. No other questions?
Just stay there 1 second. I want to make mention, it wasn't in the presentation, previous board, not this board, I think Ms. Felice and Mr. Piccini was on the board when we created the magnet school at Brookhaven. That was really dual purpose, dual language. Look at that, I made.
Very nice.
But it was dual purpose in that not only did it benefit our students instructionally across the district, because with the magnet school, remember, those of you that may not know, we allow students from our other K-3 buildings to go to Brookhaven for their primary career to participate in the program. I think last check, I think Rebecca shared, it was about 6 kids at grade level that are coming from either Kramer or Fritz.
That's right.
And you'll remember, Ms. Felice and Mr. Piccini, the Eastern Suffolk demographic report that showed our buildings were tight, right? Brookhaven was not, and that was one of the reasons that we also did that. And Fritz and Kramer were the 2 of the buildings that needed to offload some kids. So not only did it service the district instructionally, it also services facility-wise, in that it lowered the class sizes in the other two buildings by them being able to move over and participate in that program. So I just wanted to remind the board.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And so to that point, do we still find that we'd like to see more students participate in the dual language program? And how do we remind our families that it's available?
Well, why don't you talk about your,
Yeah, so every year we, as we begin a new kindergarten class, we provide several orientations and invite parents to attend. And we're just getting to the point where the popularity is such where we might, we've never had to go to a lottery, we've never had to turn anybody away. In the early years, it was hard to get, our parents to want to be a part of it. So right now, we're at a place where we're filling up quickly, we're not saying no to anyone. So as that demand changes, then we'll be responsive to it, would be my answer.
And I'll ask one more question. I don't know if it goes to the superintendent or to you, Ms. Tetuan. Do we find ourselves making a dual language program in another elementary school? Or can?
so no, that's the purpose of making the magnets.
Okay.
So we do draw people in, draw students from the other programs.
So right
I mean,
now.
at least at this point, right now, the dual language program at Brookhaven fit very nicely in that, remember, we have 6 to 7 sections per grade level. In the other buildings, we have 2 to 3, right? One of those needs to be gen ed, one of them needs to be inclusion. We just don't have the sections to do it at the smaller K3s. Brookhaven fit nicely in doing that. So not only could you do it because of the number of sections, but you could do it due to the facility and the room in the building.
And do we provide the transportation for those families?
Oh,
too?
absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
I just wanted to mention, I know that Ms. Doyle mentioned it, but, a lot of things had to align for this program to work. And I think one of the things that aligned well was the principal of Brookhaven Elementary. Dr. Raymond is a former bilingual teacher. And she's bilingual, bicultural, and she is in the day-to-day when it comes to supporting the program. So we've been very fortunate to have her at the helm, very passionate about the program and invested in the students in the dual language program as she is with all of her students. But I just definitely wanted to mention Dr. Raymond.
Well, and if I may say, the recommendation for the superintendent to hire Dr. Raymond was a proud, was proudly supported by the board at that time for the very reason of enhancing the dual language and magnet program.
And she and I have worked very well together, and I think that partnership has supported the program well.
I have a hypothetical for you.
Great.
I just moved into the district. My English dominant third grader would love to attend this program. Can my child enter in third grade without having gone through K through 2 with us?
Generally speaking, no. It's always case by case. There are students that transfer from states where they've been in a dual language program or other dual language programs, or have had some kind of, home exposure to the language. Even though they're English dominant, there are parents that. So we consider all of those things, or a nanny that spoke Spanish to them. We've had situations like that. So we take it case by case, but typically third grade would be a little late.
Now, is that because of the structure of the program or because of space requirements?
No, it's on the progression of the
It's
students.
it's linguistic. Linguistically, it becomes very difficult for a student to catch up, at that stage. And that's why it makes absolutely no sense to start language in 7th grade, by the way. If you want kids to become bilingual, you start in kindergarten, and that's across the board.
Okay, which is another topic that,
Yes.
Dr. Gianni, are they working on that?
Yes, we are.
But great question. Okay?
Thank you, Ms. Tetuan.
You're very welcome. Thank you so much. Invite me back. I'd like to talk more about E&L.
Okay.
Okay, the next time for discussion, I think I'm going to turn over to the president.
Okay, that, just to have the board all on board here. We started the superintendent search. We completed our first meeting with the BOCES team that will be guiding us through this process. And a more specific schedule of what to expect next will be forthcoming shortly. So that's it for that item.
Okay.
Back to you.
Back to me. Alrighty. Our next item for discussion is the recommended capital reserve project. Administration introduced to the board at our last meeting. Since that meeting, administration has met with our architects to further tease out the projects and get some additional information as requested by the board. Included in the board's material and board docs, you will find a cost out from our architects regarding the proposed capital reserve project. This updated cost out includes the board's request for additional information. All items to be included in the project as originally reported, except for the press box. The press box has been further defined and reduced by $40,000 to $360,000. Also included is a sketch of the press box to give the board an idea of the project, which is a standalone two-sided structure complete with a filming platform, stairway for entrance, and a second spiral staircase for egress. And that second egress is a requirement of SED. An architectural rendering will be done if the project is approved. I do want the board to know, I understand the board's concern with the price tag of the press box. Please keep in mind that when coupled with our other recommended repairs, all projects are state aidable, meaning the cost will probably be about 30 cents on the dollar. The addition of the press box to the athletic complex will not only give timekeepers, scorers, staff, and members of the press a clear vantage points to the field below, it will also provide protection from the elements during inclement weather. And in addition, making the press box a two-sided structure, it will be functional not only for the turf field, but the neighboring grass field, which has been used and needed on occasion for competitions. Moving to the turf field, that work would include removing the turf surface along with all rubber infill, and then re-level the drainage gravel, and then replace the new turf surface with the rubber infill. Total repair cost is estimated at $700,000 and holds an 8 to 10 year warranty. Two additional items that the board had requested, questions that the board had at our last meeting was what would the total cost estimate be for a complete turf field install at that site? That answer is approximately $2 million from scratch. Second question is what would the estimate cost to unturf the field and return it to a typical grass field? That answer is between $500,000 and $685,000. However, I caution the board in returning that field to grass, as it's probably not state aidable considering the district received state aid to bring it to turf initially. And in fact, I believe that turf field is a result of community requests some years ago. I do want to make it clear to the board that the repair of the turf field is essential. The field is beyond the warranty period and at the end of life. Turf field is regularly utilized by 8 of our interscholastic athletic teams for competition and practices, and our high school physical education instructional program during the school day, unlike the grass football field, which is only used by the football program. And now I'm going to ask Ms. Costa to take a re-review of the presentation. It does have the one additional item in it, and we can review the project, the estimates, and the timeline. Ms. Costa.
Thank you. As we started discussing at the last board meeting, we made a couple of changes, but we'll go over the project considerations for the board as we discuss them tonight. So these are the referendum and capital project considerations for our May 17, 2022 vote. There are 3 projects under consideration. Those 3 projects are district-wide. It's considered a project things you do district-wide, a high school project, and a Vern Prince project. I'll go over in detail each of those projects. The district-wide upgrades to the security systems includes upgrades to our camera system and our door access system. We currently have both the camera system and the door access system. We have software that is obsolete and no longer supported by those companies, so they must be upgraded. As for the camera system, district-wide, we have 700 cameras. We have approximately 15% of them that are not operational at this point. It's about 100 cameras. And we have about 50 cameras needed to handle dead zones that have been identified in the district where we're not recording and we need to be able to take, to have security cameras footage for those areas. Each camera is estimated to have a cost of camera plus installation of approximately $1,000. And if you do the math, it's about 150 cameras we need at cost of $1,000 each. That's $150,000, and the software upgrade is a $100,000 cost, adding up to the $250,000. For the door access system, again, the software is obsolete, and in this instance, the hardware is also obsolete. You can no longer receive any hardware for this system. We are taking hardware off of doors that aren't as integral as doors that break and putting it on more integral doors at this moment. So to upgrade this system, we would have to do all entry doors in the district and software. That alone comes to a cost of $250,000 for entrance doors and software. But then we would add to it the 1,000 door access points we have in the district. So inside our buildings, there are some total of 1,000 access points. To upgrade the indoor accesses, it's about $1,000 a door access. That's for hardware and the installation. It would all be compatible with the new software. We'd have upgrades. It would all be working. That comes to a total cost of $1,250,000 for that upgrade. This project is being reviewed by our architects to ensure that the prices are on target. We have 2 prices with vendors, but we really need them to come in because SED has some very special requirements over time. So we will finalize this cost as we move a little bit further through the process. Then we have the high school and Vern Cricks projects. Both of those have already been cost out by our architects and engineers. So the high school, as Dr. Gianni said, it's a turf field replacement of the field that we already have. The architect cost is $780,000. It's a revised press box from our meeting last board meeting. That's at a cost of $360,000. And the 2 items that make this aidable are the interior handrails and interior door replacement projects. The handrails are at our auditorium and our band room, and we have interior doors that are in need of replacement. The sum of that project is $1,168,000. And our Vern Cricks window replacement project and window treatments is similar to the window replacement project that we have done at both Kramer and Frank P. Long. It would be the same types of windows that some of you board members have seen that we've done the walkthroughs in the summer. The total of all of these projects comes to $4,909,000. And we speak projects, we also have to realize that the state partners with schools to keep our facilities up to date, to keep them safe for our students. It's their home away from home, and they partner with us for those costs. This comes directly from the state education department. This is our current building aid ratio. Our current building aid ratio is 76.2%, which means for every dollar we spend, the state shares actually reimburses us 76.2 cents on the dollar. So the cost of our projects is $4.9 million. The state would share in that cost with us to the tune of almost $4 million, and it would be a net cost to the district of $1.5 million. So now we spoke about the projects, how the state shares in those costs, and now we'll talk about our funding of those projects. So a project costs $4.9 million. We currently have a capital reserve. The district has saved money in the past. That's on our as of our last financial statements, June 30th, 2021. We have $2.3 million in a capital reserve. That would mean to complete these projects, we need approximately $2.5 million. So this is early in the year, but to have these conversations and to get us over the finish line to do this capital work, we have to do estimates of where we will be at the end of this fiscal year. So it's estimated that at the end of this fiscal year, we will have a surplus of $8 to $10 million. Each year that surplus is used to fund the fund balance that we use to build our budget every year, and we also replenish the reserves that we use every year. That $7 million of our $8 to $10 million is approximately spoken for of that surplus. That will leave us in the range at the end of the year of approximately $1 to $3 million of money that we can use to fund this $2.5 million needed to complete these projects. Just like to note to the board that if, the money put into a capital reserve is a little different than replenishing our reserves. The minute we put money into a capital reserve and we decide to spend that money, which is what we're talking about tonight, we get 76 cents on the dollar back. We don't get any money back if we replenish our reserves. So if we had, we'll make a recommendation at the end of the year, if we had to put $2.8 million in to replenish our reserves because we needed a little more in the capital reserve, it would be financially prudent to do so because we would be getting state aid on any money we use for capital projects. So now we're going to talk a little about, it's very early to estimate where we're going to be at the end of the year, but there are some things that have already materialized this school year to bring to the board and attention. Already we have savings that have been anticipated this year. These are things where we have budgeted dollars, and those budgets will not be needed based on factors that have occurred. The first one is pre-K administration. When we built our budget, we had yet to go out to an RFP for our pre-K program, and after the RFP with our pre-K program, we realized that there are costs in our general fund, administrative costs to run that program, that can be covered by the grant, and that's $150,000. We also have Chromebooks. Every year, we build into our budget 3 years of replenishment, 3 grade levels of replenishment of Chromebooks. And after we built our budget, so we built in $335,000. After we built our budget, the federal government came out with a grant. We applied for that grant. Happy to say that we were approved for that grant, and they will be covering the cost of our Chromebooks for this year, so that'll be a savings to the district. In addition, we had in the budget, coming out of the pandemic, we didn't know what this school year would look like. We budgeted for BOCES to continue to run our after-school program. That's at a cost of $250,000. When our pre-K provider, who is the Y, came forward with their proposal for our pre-K program, they also offered to run our after-school program. And they have access to different federal dollars to help with that program, and it was a great marriage and partnership. So they are running our before and after school programs. So this $250,000 that's in the budget for BOCES is not needed this year, and we will not spend that money. And we all know the woes that are going on in transportation with driver shortages. They exist, but as per our contract, we only pay for transportation that we use. And while we might have had some more buses, some runs are tight. Our students are all making it to school. We're making all runs, both athletic and school day runs. We do have less buses than we've had in the past. So we already have a realized savings of about $700,000 this year that we didn't anticipate. And then lastly, we have the deferral. We had an MOA with 2 bargaining units. We settled that MOA, so there was money in the budget for people who may have left during the year, and that $90,000 will not be needed. So those add up to about $1.5 million of known savings at this point that we did not anticipate. And then we have, on the unanticipated side, I wouldn't be doing justice if I didn't tell you that there's sometimes costs that we don't know about. After we built the budget, we made a decision to offer our K-12 students a remote learning option. We did that by going through 2 BOCES, upstate BOCES, Mohawk and Genesee. They are providing our K-12 learners with remote learning options. That's coming at a cost of $650,000. We built in $350,000 for remote teachers when we built our budget. We used $50,000 of that money because we did hire a teacher to manage some of the requirements of our learners. But we have $300,000 unspent there, which leaves us with an additional cost of $350,000. I think I mentioned last time I was here, for this year we have a $350,000 excess cost, but we will get BOCES aid on that $650,000 cost when we build the 22-23 budget. So over 2 years, it's probably not an excess cost, but we build budgets on a 1-year basis. So this 1 year, we will have to find that $350,000 in the budget. So those are the three legs of considering a capital project. So here we are at next steps. We're here tonight to select and prioritize the projects. We will, in December, finalize costs, especially for the security upgrade project with BBS. We will draft referendum language. We'll do that in partnership with our legal counsel in January and February. We will revise fund balance estimates as we get further towards the year in the spring, so we make sure that the finances are in order, and that will determine the final capital project list, because it goes in the referendum and the legal notice that we publish in the paper. And that's where we are here tonight, to select and prioritize projects.
Ms. Gaza, before we ask questions, can you just talk a little bit about the formula-based aids and the public enrollment on the slides you had showed previously? Yeah.
Go here, yeah?
Can you just talk a little bit about what we're seeing here?
Sure, what you see here, this is actually a printout that we get every year from the state. It actually just shows some of our building aid ratios. It's a little larger than this. I did a little screenshot and placed it here. Obviously, in the top left, you're seeing our building aid ratios. They're all 76.2 cents on the dollar. And you see these, all of the, why there's different lines and you just don't see 76.2 cents on the dollar listed once, is because legislatively, there's been all different ways that they pay aid based on when projects were voted on in the past. There used to be 10% incentives on projects. Right now, none of that really exists, and those are just projects from, we'll call it the old days, but all of our old projects and projects yet to happen will be 76.2 cents for our district. Then on the right side, you're just seeing some of the numbers that drive some of the formulas that they use in the state. Like, I refer to these numbers often. Like, let's use on the right-hand box on the upper side, it says the high cost threshold. I think it says 63,681, and that number, for me, that's for special education students. And if a student's cost exceeds that number, we get to apply for special aid from the state, because the cost of a student's education exceeds those numbers. So we use these for a lot of things we do. And each of those numbers we reference for some of the work we do. In the bottom two graphs that you're seeing, it's interesting that the state provides this, because this lends itself into some of the conversations we had last year when we built our budget. We talked about how the state aid formulas work, and we talked about how our enrollment is, that we are in a hold harmless situation with the state. We talked about those districts that look different than South Country that are receiving all this extra state aid because they have not received. The formula's been frozen for 10 years. We are a district who is in a different situation, and this actually is a visual of the situation we're in. Our aid has been increasing because you get due minimum increases in your foundation aid over the last 10 years, and we've gotten that. And our enrollment has been declining. You see actually the visual on the right. We are currently in a hold harmless position of over $1.1 million. That means that if they let the formulas run, we would receive $1.1 million less than that we're getting today. The current law continues to allow hold harmless provisions, which means they will never take that away, but they just show, this is the visual of what would have happened if the formulas were running. We would have received $1.1 million less in aid than we're receiving today. And that comes directly from the state.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Phillips.
Thank you. Okay, back to the budget, anticipated surplus. So what's being recommended is to put the money, let me get back to that slide, to put money back into capital reserves, which the board can do, but then we have to ask the community for approval to spend that capital money. And so this would represent no tax increase to the homeowners in the South Country School District, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, my second question is about when we did go through the building tour prior to the school year opening up, and walking with the facilities manager, there was one hallway at the South Country Early Childhood Education Center that had a crack in the base of the foundation of the floor there. And so I asked Anthony about that. And I said, so is that a foundation problem, whatever the case may be. And what he indicated to me at the time was that the architects go through every building and they make a list of things that they identify. So is it from that list that you came up with these priorities for this capital improvement project? Is that where the recommendation came from?
The architects come up with what's called the building condition survey, which is required by the state to give the state of affairs of what you currently have.
Is that something that's discussed in a committee that you run or a health and safety committee?
It's actually, we are waiting for the final version. We've gone over it with these BBS, and we'll be talking about it at finance and facilities.
Could you let the board know that that will be a topic, because I think others would like to hear
We're
that.
gonna take a deep dive into
Yeah.
that, I think, did I say February?
We discussed like February or May was going to be
Yeah,
on
we
one
were
of the
we were looking
agendas.
at 2 dates when we had, it was actually a budget presentation, but we're intending to take a deep dive into that.
Full presentation.
Issue, so-
Okay.
With the
So from that list is how you came up with this, or are there other things? My question really is, are there other things more pressing? But let me just say about anytime we're gonna replace windows, I'm all for it, because of the success of Frank P. Long and Kramer. I think those schools look magnificent, and Chris, desperately needs those windows, so I'm on board with the windows. But is there anything else that, that we're looking at? Is that something that you're gonna do the deep dive in for the early part of the year?
Well, when we take the deep dive, you can talk about it if you want to. We haven't decided if we're going to have the architects here or not, but there are items in priority there. There's some things that we can pick off, and we're going to do that ourselves, but there are some items that we will need to look at a bond issue down the road. 2 years, 3 years? 5 years. Okay, so
27.
So we, yeah, 27, but we'll be talking about it at least 2 years before.
Yeah.
So we believe at this time that we could probably knock off the whole building condition survey for a bond issue and take the little items through our own maintenance staff along the way. But those are the things that we want to talk about come either February or May.
Okay.
A lot of these items, there's not a lot of items on here, right? Some of these items are, the security measures are not, right? Because that's something that the architect doesn't typically look at. So the door access, the cameras are not on there.
Okay.
But those are essential
Yeah.
for us to do. I don't think the press box is on there because it's obviously a new item. Turf field, maybe?
They knew that we were proposing this, so in the final version of the building condition survey, it won't be in there because they're waiting to see what the decision is today.
These are more or less immediate things to
Yes.
do with money that we have in the reserve.
And then my final comment, because I know there's more questions, is at the Bellport Middle School, and this came up when I went to vote this last November, and the gymnasium, the wall divider that is put up is in really bad condition, really bad condition. The wallpaper from it is missing in many places. There's wood, there's wall, there's not. If someone could take a look at that and see, we probably don't open it all that much, and that's probably why we noticed it. But for the public is coming in to vote at that particular time, and if we really want to showcase our schools, they should make a statement that we're maintaining our upkeep. So if we could just look into that. But I would want to know, do items like that come on the architect's list?
They test all the mechanical systems. They test every mechanical system, every boiler in the district, they know, and you'll see all of those when you see the final building.
All right, yeah, that'll be interesting to look at. Thank you. Thank you, Madam President.
Mr. Pacini?
Thank you. I just want to make sure I wasn't on mute, sorry. So I have a couple of things, and, I'm going through this, and I guess a couple of quick questions. So I'm to understand that the unanticipated expenditures that are they're under budget, right? So that's roughly 1.5 million, am I getting that correctly?
Correct.
Yeah, you just.
And then we have,
Yes.
yeah, so what's the net between these two? Because now we have over, so what's the net between over and under?
Those are just highlighted specific items, Mr. Pacini. We believe that we'll be able to fully fund the needed costs for the capital projects that we're proposing.
Okay, no, but I'm looking, maybe I'm misunderstanding. On the funding consideration page, the two boxes say unanticipated. One is under budget, one is over budget for this school year, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so am I to understand that there's roughly $500,000 here between these two boxes of additional funding that we didn't anticipate in our budget?
Those are specific examples for you to see of ones that are known at this moment in time, on both sides of the coin. But we anticipate that we need $2,563,000 to do what we're proposing tonight. We believe that we will have that, not just in these savings and overages, but overall in our budget this year.
Okay, I have to make a statement, I have concerns over the fact that we have such a large amount of, that we're under budget. Now, that's always a wonderful thing when we're under budget, but thinking back to how difficult it was to balance this particular budget, that's where I'm struggling and I'm getting stuck.
Well, at the time we built the budget, those items were not known to be savings. They're one-time savings for things that have happened that we couldn't have known at that time. We couldn't have known, and capitalizing, oh, that's an interesting word, using that word, we are utilizing those one-time savings to do a one-time expenditure of things that we need in the district.
Understood, yeah, I got it. I guess, all right, so we're confident that these are one-time savings.
Oh, yes.
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 Oh, okay, that's where I'm getting a little bit, because, all right, I just have a hard time with, when there's a lot of discussion during budget time and afterwards about being under budget due to COVID, and now here we are under budget. It's not a good look, and I understand they're one-time savings that we couldn't have anticipated. If they're not, savings that are gonna be realized year over year, then I understand how we got here. So I'll go back to my original point, and it's much similar to what I said before, but actually, there are a few quick questions. In regards to the cameras, did I hear you say that out of the roughly 800 cameras we have in the district, 100 of them are not working? Is that accurate?
700, yes, there are 100 cameras not working. About 15% of the 700 cameras that we own do not work, they're non-functional, and we have 50 dead zones where we need additional cameras. So we need about 150 new cameras in the district, replacement plus new cameras.
How long have those 100 cameras been not operational?
I don't know how long they haven't been operational.
Dr. Gianni, you have any idea?
No, they've been dropping off on us, but it hasn't been long for that.
I'm a little concerned that there's 100 cameras not operational. So much of what happens today, we rely on cameras. The board did not know that we have 15% of our cameras not working. That does concern me a little bit. But I guess I really want to go back, and then I heard you correctly that it's $100,000 to upgrade the software?
Correct. And $20,000 a year annual maintenance after that, just for the software.
I can almost understand the maintenance over the $100,000 to upload software. And this is, to me, I'm highlighting one of those examples where everything in a school district or municipality is much more money than it should be. And I'm not a camera expert, but that's just kind of what it looks like to me. But I'll move on. And I know I had a lot of issues with the replacement of the turf field. I still have issues. I'm not really going to fight it anymore because I see that we are kind of backed into a corner. I would hope that at some point, if there's a bond issue down the road, whether I'm here or not, that, fixing some of the incorrect layout of the field is considered. But I am going to harp on the press box because I'm really struggling here. And I understand it reduced by $40,000 to $360,000, but it's really hard for me to wrap my head around $360,000 based on a picture, that looks like it's written on a Post-it note, and I really am struggling with why such a structure is necessary. Are we buying a Cadillac when we can live with a Honda? Is this really necessary? Because it's my understanding that something's needed to protect the equipment in inclement weather. And I get that, but I'm looking at spiral staircases and, film decks and things like that. I really need to know from whether it's the athletic director, whether it's Dr. Gianni, that this is really necessary. And I don't mean to, discredit the need for this for the athletes to play on a field, but this seems like a lot to me.
Well, there's no doubt it's a lot of money. I'm not gonna negate that at all, which is why we did meet with the architects. I will tell you, it is not a Cadillac. The $400,000 was the Cadillac. It was a much larger press box. We did add the two-sided piece and put it on the other side of the field, so we can get further use of it, so not only will it be utilized by the 8 interscholastic athletic teams that we have, I think it'll also encourage school events there as well. And it allows for the growth, right? So having a two-sided press box, now you can use for the grass field and eventually put spectator bleachers on that field, and it'll be utilized for 2 facilities. Listen, it's a statement. It's obviously something that if you asked our timekeepers, coaches, and personnel that sit in the inclement weather, they will tell you it is absolutely necessary. I think you'll also see announcers at our games now as well because of the press box. And I think it's also something the community does want. And I recognize the number, but when you look at the 70 cents on the dollar, the price goes down to about $108,000, which is also a big number. A lot of that number has to do with the egress that's required by the state. I know it's a napkin sketch that you're looking at, but I think you can see from that sketch that 2 decks of stairwells are going to it, as well as a spiral steel case in terms of egress. So that's where all the cost comes from. We really emphasize that with the architect, and they were pretty emphatic about that's the cheapest it's going to come.
I guess, when you look at this, you could build a really, 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 really nice house for a lot less money than this press box. And I really think we need to highlight the fact that this is similar to the fencing at Vern Chris in the respect that, the whole mechanism to save school districts money does the exact opposite. And I don't know how this gets fixed. Maybe this is something for the legislative committee, but I can't. I'm struggling with it. I really am. I know we need cover. I know we need something indoors, and I guess I would feel better about it if I saw some sort of rendering of what the long-term plan is for the field. You talk about bleachers. You talk, on the other side, you talk about more events. I mean, I know the field needs to be replaced. I get it, but what are we really talking about here, as far as the future of this field?
Well, we could certainly provide additional information at a later date of what the field could look like, the grass field, that is.
I think you're talking about the whole complex where the turf field is, isn't it?
No, well, I guess the turf field itself, when you said bleachers, were you talking about bleachers on the home side of the field?
No,
Where the press box
I was
would be?
talking about bleachers for the grass field, making that another game
okay.
field.
Oh, the one that would be north of the
Right.
turf field.
Yeah, I'm not good at northeast.
Well, that's why I'm interrupting you, to
But how- but-
clarify, because there was some confusion, I think, at a prior meeting about exactly which fields were being talked about. And it's now clear to me from what you've actually sketched out, and it looked worse than the napkin version of the press box, but I was able to see, you're talking, the turf field is the one that runs west to east, and it's directly above the parking lot.
Next door to the tennis courts.
Right. And then beyond that, we have some grass fields. But the one we're talking about, the turf field, from talking to you and also listening to Bryn Johnson last time, it's getting a lot more use than I ever envisioned.
Oh,
And-
yeah, it's getting a lot of,
And
it's
so,
the most utilized,
in my,
grass facility
because
we're
it's
using.
actually part of our physical education program, not just, interscholastic activities. So I'm comfortable in looking at these things in like mandatory categories And since our last meeting, I feel that the proposal on the turf field itself is mandatory, as is the camera system, the door access system, the security systems, and also, it's important to pull in the handrails and the door replacements at the high school so we get the benefit of state reimbursement. I'm still not sure that the press box is mandatory. It seems, I think that in terms of long-range planning, I'm glad to hear the ideas out there because I can start to envision what could be an improvement. I'm not sure that I think now is the time to actually do that. And I didn't, and as far as the window replacements at Vern Critz, I would say that's pretty close to mandatory because it'll be a huge improvement for the students in that building.
And to your point, Madam President, if the superintendent could provide us with more of the types of activities that are utilized on the turf field, as we we got a glimpse of last meeting. If there's more that wasn't covered at that meeting, could you make us
I
aware
can
of
tell you
that?
right off the top of my head. It's boys and girls lacrosse, JV and varsity. It's boys and girls soccer, JV and varsity. That makes up how many teams? One,
But there was
two,
more than teams.
Boys and girls soccer, JV and varsity. And that's two sides, so that's 8 teams. And then in addition to that, our high school physical education program uses it every single day. Not to
That
mention,
I think, to the president's point, we weren't aware of.
Yeah, and I hadn't shared it. It was Bryn who did.
Yeah.
I'll give you another example. This year, not that you needed turf to do it, but we held the homecoming dance on the turf field with lights. And I think that once you put a press box on it, and again, I want to again say, I get it's a lot of money. You do the turf, you do the press box, the facility's done. It's a beautiful facility for your kids' performances as well as spectators seeing it. And you set yourself up for improving your athletic complex by having a press box already in place for a grass field that is next door and already ready to be used. So your next step is only putting bleachers on it. So that's the thought ahead of it. And again, I get it. It's a lot of money. Try to think about it as $108,000 rather than $360,000, but still it's a lot of money. But it is something that will benefit the student body and the programs that we host.
And back to Mr. Pacini's comment
Did we lose?
about the cost of construction in school districts being more than what you would think it would be, and he stepped in and said maybe this is an issue for the legislative committee. I thought he was stealing my thunder because that's what I wanted to say to you, board members who are on the legislative committee. This is something that could go to the state. They set the requirements for hiring practices and other things that have to be done, and maybe they need to take another look at it. Because it is a lot of money when you compare it to a house the way it was compared. So
I have a question.
I think, are we having, you have a question or ready? Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Ms. Costa, how much of the capital reserve are we going to spend on the entirety of the proposed capital project?
We would spend what we currently have in it, and the board would approve a transfer to increase that capital reserve to bring us up to the $4.9 million that we need. You would approve a transfer to capital reserve this school year to bring the $2.5 million capital reserve amount, 2.3 million, that's the capital reserve, about $2,345,000. We'd have to add to it $2,563,000, and then we would have that would be enough money for us to cover all these projects. That $2,563,000 we'd be adding to it with this year's money.
Now,
So let me just try to clarify the whole process. So the board would need to put the money in that we talked about into the capital reserve, so we had the funds to do the project.
yeah.
Then the voters would have to approve the project.
Mhm.
Then the project will go out to bid,
Mhm.
and generally the project may come in, or should come in, less. So if it's less, the money that's the money not spent would remain in the capital reserve. And that's how the capital reserve would continue.
So if that referendum fails, we have a $4.9 million reserve.
Correct.
Now, how much after that, if it's passed, will we get back after aid is received from the state?
76.3 cents.
76.2 cents on the dollar. Now, in full disclosure, there are some things that come out over time.
So
About
ballpark,
95% of the project, between 90 to 95% of the project will be aidable.
so how much will we be actually spending on the project?
So our estimate of spending on the project is right here. We estimate that 90% of the project will be aidable. We will receive 76.2 cents on the dollar on 90% of the value of the project, which would mean a net cost to us of $1.5 million.
Okay. Now, my next question is, when you put money in the capital reserve, are you able to spend it in any circumstance on things other than capital projects? Even with, putting a referendum out for the voters?
Yeah.
Referendum is very specific. It identifies our total legal authorization. So let's say we move forward. We agree that all the projects with the architects, when we're all said and done, let's say they agree that the cost of the projects are $4,909,000. That's the agreed number. That's what the referendum would have. And let's say the bids come in at $5 million. We have no legal authority to spend $5 million. We only have a legal authority to spend $4,909,000. We have to go back to the drawing board and revise what we're doing, because, you can even see it from what's happening today. Cost of product, cost of services, cost of this, things could happen.
Yeah. Now, can we ask the voters to move that 4.9 to a different reserve?
There are, there are legalities as to how you can move monies around reserves. Yes, it is allowed to move monies around reserve, but each reserve is specific.
Yeah, I don't
to
think
how
that
you can
one,
move.
I don't think we can move the capital reserve money.
Capital reserve money, you have to,
We'd have to look at the board's authority when we created the reserve, but I don't think we can move it.
So all money goes into the capital reserve, has to be used for a capital project.
Let us refer to the state guidance on that capital reserve.
Okay.
Unspent, you have to do, when you created that reserve, I believe you created it for a 10-year useful life, up to a $10 million in total funding, which means we don't have the authority to even fund it for more than $10 million. And at the end of 10 years, it's over. We would have to go back to the public for the authority to even create a capital reserve that could have zero money in it. But we're using the authority that was created years ago for that capital reserve to fund it and up to its maximums. But the unspent monies in that reserve is prescribed by the state education.
So I ask those questions because I'm just concerned about the future budgets to come. Being that we're gonna spend $4.9 million, or we have $4.9 million to spend on such projects, when, budgets down the road will be equally as tight, because we have the money from the rescue plan, and we're using that one-shot sum of funds, to fill our budget gaps when we have those reoccurring expenses. So I'm looking at this 4.9 as another set of one-shot funds being spent on one-shot expenses, when, I would want to work to use that to assist us with the budgets to come. So, we're not looking at, a massively tight budget when we have 4.9 million here that we could potentially be using just how we're using the rescue funds. That's why I'm asking these questions.
so to answer your question about the transfers require voter authority.
Yeah, but so does
So
spending it on any capital project also requires.
Right, so voter authority is a transfer only within reserves in the same section. So capital reserve section is one section, the tax certiorari section is in the same section. Monies can be transferred between those two different types of reserves because they're both in the same section. And the other is that the voters may vote to liquidate the reserve fund after, at first, you have to use the funds after liquidation to apply that to any debt service that is outstanding for bonds, and then the rest of the money can be applied for any local purpose.
So we can use that money somehow to spend on non-capital projects.
Well, it sounds like you'd have to liquidate it and it would go to our debt.
You'd have to liquidate it with voter approval.
We'd go to abroad, it'll go to your debt.
You'd
have
go-
debt.
you'd satisfy
You'll-
the debt.
You'll lose the money to debt.
Okay, now are we spending current money on any form of debt?
We're required to make debt service payments, so they're built into our budget every
Okay.
year.
So
we're required.
instead of making those debt service payments that are already built into the budget, we use that money to help us fill that gap and use the reserve money to pay for the debt.
Well, if following that logic of a one-time savings and a recurring cost, our debt service costs go out for many years into the future. We took out 15, 20-year bonds when we did work. We must continue to pay that. So even if we liquidated the $2.3 million that's in the capital reserve, and we were required to use it to spend down our debt, we still have debt payments the following year. It's a one-time situation, and then our debt service payment would spike up the following year after that. So we would, let's say, reduce our budget by $2.3 million because we have funds to cover a debt service payment, but the next year we still have the same debt service payment. We pretty much have level debt service payments all the way to 2026, 27.
And the problem you have here is you have essential repairs that need to be done. If you choose not to do them through the capital reserve, you're gonna do them some other way, because they need to be done. And they'll be budgeted for.
And the unfortunate...
And not aidable?
And the unfortunate piece, Mr. Police, is you're right.
It would still be, well, if it's packaged as we have it packaged, it would be able.
Okay.
But if they become an emergent in nature sometimes, and you have to do just a patchwork, they're not aidable, the same way that a capital project that goes through the SED review is aidable. Because the SED is reviewing your plans, and they're making sure that it meets all their specifications, and that's what the partnership is on the aid. And if you do something, like we wouldn't be able to upgrade, let's say the security system ends up being an equipment line in our budget, there's no aid for that. There's no aid. They are partnering that we're putting in the right equipment, that we're doing it the right way, where if we had to do something quickly, we wouldn't be able to do that.
Does the state, I'm sorry, do you have another question?
I do, just
Okay.
one more question. We have the board said yes to this proposed plan. We would move that additional money into the reserve without voter approval. Is that correct? And now we have 4.9 million. And, should the vote fail, now we're stuck with that 4.9 million to use on a capital project.
Well, we started the conversation talking about like we have identified one-time savings as a result. A lot of our pandemic-related things, we built the budget, was a perfect, it's usually advantageous to use those one-time things to do fixes you really need.
Yeah.
So we would have that money full to fund balance at the end of the year anyway. We would just be putting it in other reserves. Because it's excess money for a one-time deal. So we would say, if it didn't want to go into the capital reserve, we'd be coming forward to you saying, put more money in the employee benefit liability reserve, or the workers' comp reserve, or the retirement reserve.
But it would remain in the capital reserve.
But see, my only reservation is that I would rather it be in a reserve where you could tap into it when you have that tight budget, as we have done in the past
But
years.
again, you gotta remember, these are one-time purchases. When you have a tight budget, you have to realize those through efficiencies.
But see, we are also using the federal funds as we're using that one-time money for recurring expenses because of that gap. Is that, you follow me?
Yes, and our plan is to create efficiencies along the way, so when those monies are gone, we'll be able to realize those things.
But now, would those efficiencies be, looking at layoffs as we did last year?
Well, we're hopeful that there won't be any excessing, but I'm not gonna say that's not a possibility. But I will say that one-time monies would solve that anyway.
It just delays it. It just delays the same decision that you had to make. But you are right. We have $8 million in federal funds, or $12 million, that we won't have in 3 years. And we went through that conversation. So, but if we segregate this out, these were unanticipated one-time savings. They're perfect items to get for work that you really need, that you'd have to do, and that you would be able to realize a partnership with the state to get tremendous. We have a terrific building aid ratio. We don't have 14, 15, 20% like some districts have. We have 76 cents. So they're perfect things to say, we're gonna have $1.5 million in savings, let's use it for something that we really need in the district. And, because they won't replicate themselves. We'll have more buses in the future. We won't, you know, we need Chromebooks every year. We just got awarded a grant. Like these are things that happen that we didn't anticipate, and we're capitalizing on the situation to get what the district needs.
Can I just clarify in my own mind?
Sure.
If we say that we think this entire proposal is a good idea, with the possible exception of the press box, but the proposal itself, it's a good idea, and we recognize that some of the things in there are absolutely essential in our security issues, and in order for the turf field to continue to be used in our programs, something has to be done about it. So, if we approve that, we have the money on hand right now in order to pay to get that done. Is that correct?
I mean,
And then we would anticipate getting the state reimbursement, but probably that would come in the next fiscal year?
it comes in.
Or
It comes
the-
in
or-
based on bids and when the work starts, so it could be 2 years from now based on when bids
Okay.
and work starts, but
So
yes,
it would come back in the future.
yes.
So we could spend the money now, anticipate getting some portion of that back at a date in the future. And we still have a plan for maintaining the capital reserve fund at the maximum we're allowed to have it?
Well, our resolution's only good for 10 years.
Yeah, it depends what
It would sunset.
it depends what the board chooses to put in the capital reserve.
But I mean, how much are we allowed to have maintained in it?
A grand total over all the years of no more than $10 million.
And how close are we to that?
I will do that calculation for you.
Okay.
I just don't have it at the top of my head.
Okay. But with the money on hand, there's enough in capital reserve alone to pay for it? Or we're also using some money from these unanticipated, I'll call them savings, expenses that we did not incur. So it's a combination of the two that gives us the money to write the check to pay for the project if we approve it.
Yeah, we would, towards the end of the year, when we talk about funding our reserves, we probably would have this conversation, but we're talking about it now so we don't lose the opportunity to do a referendum. So at the end of the year, these one-time savings would generate that savings, and we may still have been sitting here in May saying to the board, or June, we need to increase our capital reserve by $2.5 million. But we would have lost the opportunity to put it on a referendum. Because these are known savings that we have now, and real needs, especially in the security system side, to wait a whole other year to go forward with those projects, is not what we're recommending. So yes, we are recommending that $2.5 million is in our budget this year. You will move it to capital reserve at the end of the year, which means that when the referendum is to the public, there is enough funds to cover the project that we're recommending.
And I have one more question, and this is about the press box idea. If we were to say no tonight, it still is something that could be put in a planning stage in the future, particularly in an upcoming bond that I think I saw you raise your hand to say it's about 5 years with us talking about it 2 and 3 years from now.
Our debt rolls off, I think, in 26, 27. we'll give you that presentation in the spring. Our debt rolls off in 26, 27. We will start having conversations a couple of years before that as to the work to do. Because there's a couple of years before you bond money that you can start your work, because there's short-term financing opportunities that you can do. But our goal would be to marry a bond issue with the rolling off debt, but we could start the work a couple of years earlier than that.
Then my question is to administration. If we made the decision not to go forward with the press box tonight, with the idea that we could pick it up in the bond, how, if in any way, does that adversely affect our students and, the atmosphere? Because I can actually see how something like that could boost the way they feel about coming to high school in particular, and then the younger kids looking forward to going to high school. I can see a reason to do it for more than just having a press box to keep papers dry in the rain.
So I can't speak on behalf of the students, but I can tell you that my understanding is the press box was initially in the first bond issue and got cut out by the previous board. And it has been something that's been requested since I have been here. You all know that I've been here for 9 years now. So it is something that's wanted and has been wanted in the past. Rather than the board choosing to cut it out, I prefer to see if we can get the architect to give us a better rendering and ask our interim athletic director to give us an idea of what that facility improvement might look like and the benefits of the press box, because I think it would be an error to not include it in this project when we have the funds, the one-time funds to do it.
Because what this sounds like to me is a lot of things in this proposal are mandatory in order to have usefulness. But it's in, the windows, yes, it's going to be an improvement in Vern crits, but they're windows. The press box is the only thing that I would give the title, an add-on, an upgrade. Everything else I think is necessary. So if you could get that information, and do we have time to come back and do this at the next meeting, or how do you?
Well, I think here, I see Mr. Pacini's hands up.
Mr. Pacini. Did you want to talk?
Thank you. Yes, I did. I'm sorry, I was having a problem unmuting. So I know I kind of derailed the conversation because of press box, so I do want to circle back around. I do, and I knew this for a while, I do understand that it's aidable. So yes, $100,000 is much easier, to swallow because it's aidable. I still would like to see, I would have no problem if, for me personally, giving the green light to go forward with what's here now because of that. However, I would ask for, number one, a much better rendering to fully understand what the money is going to. And I would ask for some serious thought and consideration to scale this structure back and to see, can it be, is there any portion of this that could it be smaller? Does it need everything that's there? If somebody sits there and tells me, yes, that we need everything that's here and here's why, it will be easier for me to get it. And I know, because I've had conversations with some staff members and listen, we just need a roof to protect equipment when it rains. We don't need a hotel suite. So, and that's secondhand hearsay, so I understand it, but I'd really like to see, again, I have no problem approving going forward with the promise of administration that they're going to roll up their sleeve, sharpen the pencil, and see what we can do to make this a little bit more easy to swallow for me and probably some other board members and some community members. So, I don't know if that helps.
Is it possible to have something that is kind of as rudimentary as a dugout, but in different materials and raised up off the ground so that they've got the height? Is it possible to do that and bring that in for less money?
The architect shared the only way you're going to get a press box in cheaper is through a donation of materials and a group of volunteers to construct and assemble. And then you run the risk of the liabilities of that happening on school property as well. So, listen,
You don't get a
we
warranty.
what's that?
And you don't get a warranty for that.
You don't get a warranty. We teased the project out with the architect. That's how it went from 400 to 360. It's not a Cadillac model, but it does provide all the items that are necessary for not only roof over your head, but filming on the deck from both sides. So I don't think that we're going to be able to get it any cheaper through sharpening any more pencils than $360,000.
Okay. But I heard the other board members say they would like, Mr. Puccini, correct me, I'm trying to say what I think I heard. You'd like to see a better rendering before voting? Or
Well,
you're-
I know,
or-
we
No.
don't need a vote tonight, we need direction.
Oh,
That
okay.
We can get moving on this, because the board will be voting when ultimately we put the referendum up, when we move the money from the capital project, to the capital reserve. But I just want the go-ahead to go with what we have, or even with what we have with the agreement that I'm gonna bring more information back on the press box.
Okay, I don't hear anybody saying no to the entire proposal. I don't hear any of that. I think there's a solid recognition that there's, almost all of it is, essential and mandatory, and we have to do it. Am I correct in summing that up? So it's really down to the press box, and I think with some more information, the board members would be able to make a decision about that one.
Okay.
Does that help to give you guidance about the proposal?
I would also like clarification on, the movement of funds in the capital reserve, because, when I brought that up, I remember, trying to dig our way out of the gap we were in last year. It was proposed that we move 2.3 million from the capital reserve to the ERS reserve, to fill that gap, and, that was proposed. I don't think it was done, but, I'm wondering, if we were proposing it back then, what were we going to use that money in the ERS reserve to do? And, I'm just kind of curious as to why now we are not sure that we could, what funds we could move the money from the capital reserve to.
I don't remember that.
Well,
Or not
No,
that-
I'm looking at it now.
No, he's right, and
Yeah.
we did speak about that, and it would also require the voter approval.
Yes.
But I think at that time, we were at a crunch for money and replacing money, and we were trying to fund that ERS reserve at that time.
Well, looks like we were taking money out of the ERS reserve.
To support the budget.
Yeah.
You can speak to
We do
it,
that
and
every
then
year.
replacing it with capital
Yeah.
reserve.
Okay,
It's about $3 million in reserves every year to support the budget. So that
Yes.
is a revenue infusion every year. If we didn't replenish those reserves, if we talk like that, like right now, on one of the slides, we talked about replenishing our fund balance and our reserves. It's part of our fiscal plan for long-term fiscal health. But if we didn't replenish our reserves, at one point we would run out of them. So when you run out of the reserve, so if you're spending money out of your savings account at home and you're never putting it back, and then the one day it goes away, but you're using it for your living expenses, we'll call it recurring expenses, you're gonna get to the end of your savings account and say, I've been living with this much money, oh my God, it's gone, and you still have the same recurring expenses. That is what we've used our reserve for, but a fiscally responsible way to use your reserves is to use it and replenish. And in some times, you may use a little more, replenish a little less, but the goal is you're pretty much trying to keep an even keel for your budget building practices. And then the federal dollars came in.
I get that. Now, is our capital reserve, is it so important to replenish that one? I don't see that as,
Our funding of our capital reserve in the past, they've only been here 2 years. I haven't been here since we funded it, but it appears to be in looking at past budgets and finding fiscal endings of the year. We have funded it at the end of the year when there has been surpluses that maybe we didn't anticipate. And every year in a building, in a budget that's $145 million, it's gonna be things that, you know, you budget for that don't come the way they should, and things that cost a little more than you should, and it's the way it happens. It seems we've budgeted in the past, funded the capital reserve with excesses that happened at the end of the year. And you did, that's how the 2.3 million that's currently sitting in there now got in there. From past years where we replenished the reserves we're using, and then we still had more, and we said, let's put it to a capital reserve. We have work we need in the district in the future, and if we go through all the pieces that are needed, all the steps, that money will generate revenue for us in the future. So that excess money generates revenue for us in the future, because once a project hits the street, we'll call it, and we spend that money, the state, it pays us also. So that is actually revenue that generates income for us. There's no other revenue source or reserve that we have that generates income for us other than the capital reserve.
So if we deplete that reserve, we're no longer generating income.
We have to do the project to generate the income, so we fund that reserve with unforeseen, excesses that we didn't anticipate. We fund it and we say, we have 1 million square feet of buildings here. There's always things that we have to upgrade. By using a capital reserve and funding one for when you have needs in the future, you not only get the partnering of the state with the 76 cents on the dollar, you also don't incur any of the costs to borrow money. Because if something you had to do, like if we had to do this work, you'd have to go out for a bond issue. You'd have to pay interest costs on those bonds. You have to pay bond counsel. You have to pay fiscal advisors. Those are all costs that you have to pay just to go to the street with money. Every time you save your own money, you save those costs. You still partner with the state. The state partners with you the same amount, whether you bonded the money or whether you saved the money on your own.
We specifically created the reserve to put those one-time surpluses in, or savings in, so we can do capital work without having to go to the public and increase taxes. That's the
No,
purpose.
I get that, but, to me, it kind of seems like we're gonna spend the money not realizing that, the year after next year, we're gonna have massive budget issues, big gaps to fill. That's just my thought. So I really wanna understand, where it looks like we're gonna be and how we could spend this money in other ways besides this capital project, so.
The problem we have, as I see it, is we've got some hefty expenses in terms of security, and those really should be taken care of as soon as possible.
No, that I agree with.
And also the turf field, because if that's out of commission and our physical ed students don't have a field to have their classes on, at a minimum, it's gonna add more minutes in getting from the gymnasium area up to wherever they're having phys ed, which takes those minutes away from the program.
But-
So,
Well, not only that, it's going to be a scheduling nightmare for your athletic program for 8 teams to be scheduled within the rest of the facility.
Right.
You'll
But-
probably have more away games because you won't be able to host the games.
and that's
But-
not fun, that's not fun for the athletes or for the families.
But being physically responsible, we wouldn't choose turf if grass is cheaper and you don't have to do turf again the next 8 to 10 years. If we're being physically responsible, we don't need to have brand new windows in a couple of our schools spending $1.8 million being physically responsible when we know that down the road, we're gonna be looking at, some very tight budgets, so that's just.
Mr.
Well,
Parker?
when you look at this project, everything on this is something that the school district needs, with the exception of one item. The camera system, the door access system, all of that is so important for the security of the kids. The high school turf, just go down the line. Take the press box out if that's such a major issue and move on with this, because this is something that we're gonna regret.
May I make a comment? In the beginning, when we first talked about the capital projects, I had asked if it could be 3 individual votes, because, you know, if it is what's being recommended, and if it is what the superintendent is saying that it's being asked for, then let the voters tell us that. So if we can vote on each individual, we can have the community vote on each individual project, they'll tell us if they want that press box or not. And if they want the turf field redone. That's how I feel about it. I want to know a little bit more about how we came up with this priority list based on the architecture's review of our buildings, and is there something more pressing? And then with respect to the press box, if it is built, does that include, it doesn't include the sound system, I'm sure. It doesn't, you know, so where does that money come from? Because I remember 2 years ago, I'll just wait for council to finish talking, because this is directed to them.
Certain things are aidable and certain things are not. So you just have to be careful when if you're splitting up.
We were told the handrails
Yeah,
was the
but
aidable
when you
one,
pull
and
the
that was
press
why we
box
could spread it out.
And you don't marry it with the building.
No, I'm not suggesting pull it out.
No, but if you vote it independently.
Yeah.
And the voters choose the press box and not the handrails, you're no longer getting aid on your press box.
No, actually, okay, I understand that. What I meant was the security system, the high school, turf replacement, and then Vern Crits. So you're saying if they reject the turf field, then the handrails also get rejected?
Well, it depends on how you package it.
All right, we can talk about that, that's semantics.
Yeah,
We
you
can
don't
talk
want
about that later.
contingent.
It's very late. It's been a very long day.
Okay.
I lost my point. Oh, to the point of obsolete equipment and obsolete technology. That is also something that I think we need to talk about in the legislative committee and with our state officials. The state DEC, not DEC, sorry, SED, has to do something about, we no sooner get equipment, and then the charging systems for Chromebooks, for example, are obsolete with the new version of Chromebooks. It's like, you know, and every district goes through this. So we have all of this massive expense. We have a massive expense with a security system, not because we failed, but because the equipment is obsolete. And I remember this. My father was a sole proprietor in an auto repair business. And when I worked with him, and we were both, you know, New York State motor vehicle inspectors. So you had to buy a $7,000 piece of equipment. They financed it for you for a nice price. You no sooner paid it off, and now you had to buy a $20,000 piece of equipment. And this is back in the 70s. And, you know, I mean, that was a lot of money. And every time, and you couldn't use the old system anymore. It was like that. If you wanted to stay in business and inspect cars, you had to buy this new equipment. And a lot of shops went out of business, which is when
So
leasing.
that's a good thing for the legislative committee to take up and see.
I think it is.
And if you could add that to your list.
But again, this is something that, you know, this will be like the second or the third time when we're going back and forth with the same issue. This is not something that just came up tonight. We've known about it. I went to the schools, I looked around, I checked out some of the things. This is not new. So I just wish we could. How much longer are we gonna have to go until we come up with a
Okay,
decision?
I think that I summed it up more than 5 minutes ago, that there's a consensus that there are some essential things here that need to be done. It's really the press box that's still a little questionable. And so the fair statement is, I don't hear anybody around the table or remotely saying, forget about the whole thing. It really has come down to still just a question about the press box. And so that you will check out. I'm just trying to sum up what I think I'm hearing here. Proceed with a plan for projects to use capital reserves, with the plan being that over time we will see some state reimbursement. So the net cost to us over time is less than what the total amount is shown here today. And with more information about the press box, I I would think that at the next meeting, we ought to be able to dispose of that pretty quickly. Am I summing things up accurately?
I believe so.
I see 3 nods at the table, and I think, okay, Mr. Pacini's nodding also.
I also think that there's one, budgeting is a very important role of all of us here. There should be, and I'm sure there is, a class where, like Cameron, he really wants to understand how budget works. How dollars are moved from one position to the other. There should be something available for him. Anyone else who wants to learn more about
New York State School Boards Association has training programs on that. And so for board members can, go online and see what is offered. In fact, this is not the topic you're talking about, but there's a free webinar tomorrow from 12 to 1:30 that is talking about budgeting in this political climate. So anybody who's got the ability to sign on, that would be good. And they do have their regular classes on budgeting and on school board, the powers of the school board and so forth. So that, I think, is a good suggestion for you to bring that up tonight to remind us that there are resources out there for further continuing education for board members. All right.
Thank you, Ms. Constance. Our next item for discussion is electronic display signs. As presented at our last meeting, prior to the opening of the school, the board asked administration to look into the cost of electronic display signs for our schools. Administration provided detail and pricing, which ranged from $35,000 to $40,000 for a complete installation. At that meeting, the board asked administration to check with our local fire department and ambulance company who recently installed electronic sign for cost estimates, and we learned that their cost estimates were relatively similar to our estimates. If the board would like to pursue the purchase and installation of electronic signage, administration believes we can support purchase of 2 signs with an estimate price tag of $35,000 to $40,000 each. I offer this for the board's discussion.
Does anybody want to start, or can I say my piece and then let everybody else speak? I've heard from a number of people in the community who became aware that this was discussed. None of them want the sign, and some of them even, knew of other interests in the area that would be concerned about having digital signs in residential areas and so forth. I never could get comfortable with the idea that this was necessary, because it's not, I don't think it's giving information that's not otherwise available to the community and to, our parents and students and even us. I had one community person said that they kind of liked seeing the temporary signs go up to announce, like a drama performance or the budget election or budget vote. Because it comes up and it gets your attention and goes down. I don't see this as an essential expense, and I'm not in favor of doing it. I'm saying this first just so that I can now sit back and go around the table and have everybody else speak. Anybody want to go first? Please.
I appreciate administration, looking into the details, it was something that I thought would benefit the district, but after the discussions that the president has just outlined and hearing from community members, I too agree that there's not going to be support in the community for it. And it's much more cost prohibitive than I initially anticipated, so I'm no longer in support of it either.
Oh, I have no comment.
No comment. Mr. Parker?
I am not in support of it as well.
You're not in support? Okay. Did I hear you say you had no comment?
Yeah, no comment.
Okay. And Mr. Pacini, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I'm not in support solely because of the, I don't think it's cost effective. I think it's something that if there's a bond issue, float, taken out down the road, it might be revisited. I do think it would be a benefit, but not at this cost.
So, do you need,
No.
you don't
no,
need
I
us to
need
do
nothing.
anything except to hear
I need
what we...
nothing.
Okay. All right, so that won't be on our agenda next time.
No, it will not.
Thank you.
Okay, I think I'm up. May I move to curriculum?
Oh, absolutely.
Administration recommends approval of curriculum items reflected in Schedule G1 and G3.
G1 and 3, you're pulling number 2 out?
G1 through 3, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
1, 2,
My
and,
apologies.
okay.
Yes,
1, 2, and 3.
yes.
Is there a motion to approve curriculum 1, 2, and 3? I see Ms. Felice. A second, Mr. Parker. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimously approved.
Thank you. Administration recommends approval of personnel changes reflected in Schedules H1 through H9.
Is there a motion to approve items H1 through H9? Mr. Parker, second, Ms. Felice. Any questions or discussions? Seeing none, all in favor? This is unanimous.
And I do want to congratulate the board, just approved 2 individuals for tenure. Kerry Kearney, elementary teacher, and Christine Tomasino, teaching assistant. Brookhaven teacher and Vern teaching assistant. So congratulations to both of them. Moving on to, what's that, 10?
Yeah, there is a 10. TA, 10.1.
Oh.
Oh, did we?
I don't have a 10.1.
I have only
I only have 9.
1 through 9.
All right.
Do we need to refresh again?
We'll have to revisit. I didn't,
Yeah. I see 10.1.
You do?
Yeah, on the, if you open up the personnel agenda.
Oh, hold on.
That's
Okay,
8.
it's not on the-
All right, we
Yeah.
did 1 through 9. All right, tell me which one you need to open.
You have to open up the document that
You gotta
says
go to-
personnel agenda.
You gotta go to 10 and open up 12/8/21.
Yes. And in the administrative content.
12/8/21, I see that one.
And it's an instructional appointment for a teaching assistant. So that was not included in my
Oh, I see the
recommendation.
10. Okay, so now, are you making a
Making a
recommendation?
recommendation to approve item 10.1 on personnel agenda.
So is there a motion to approve item, and it's 8:10.1, Mr. Trent? A second by Ms. Felice. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimously approved. So now we've got every single personnel item approved, correct?
Correct. And moving on to business, administration recommends approval of business items affected in schedules I1 through I5.
Is there a motion to approve business items I1 through I5? Mr. Parker, second by Ms. Felice. Questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? It's unanimously approved.
And that is all I have.
Thank you. And no more, we're down to closing remarks. Mr. Parker? Okay. Mr. Trent?
No.
Ms. Felice?
Just everybody, in whichever way you celebrate, please enjoy the holiday seasons, being safe, and enjoy your family at this time, and we'll see you next year.
And let's take that as a statement for the entire board. Thank you for your words. Mr. Puccini?
Yeah, really quickly, I learned last week that there is something I never heard of before in education called International Teaching Certification. I'm unfamiliar with this. We do have a staff member who is working towards this, and I believe finds out sometime in the very near future if they've passed all the requirements. And I wondered if this person passes, maybe we can have maybe just a brief recognition or discussion at a future board meeting to learn more about what this is. Maybe we can have a discussion, ahead of time to see if it is worthy of a board meeting discussion. But I know the staff members work really hard towards this and is pretty proud of it and would probably, upon completion and certification, if that happens for them, would love to come and speak about it. So just something I never heard of, but I thought I'd throw out there. No reason to spend any time on it tonight, but that was it.
Can I
Thank you.
just embellish what you said?
Sure.
Could we have that included, and it would just be, just highlights of all the special qualifications that we have on board and all of the special programs that we have, because we're seeing some phenomenal things going on in our school buildings, and I just think to have them all listed in one place, it would be a really good thing for us to just keep in front of us, so we keep in mind and see how well we have been doing. Would that
I
be
think
okay
that's the
with
spirit
you?
of I think that's the spirit of what I'm looking for. Is I would hope that if the staff member completes it and is certified, we can celebrate them in some way and maybe just have them present what this really means. I know it's not like state certifications where there's any type of salary increase. I think this person, I don't want to speak for them, I think they're doing it basically just because they love what they do and they feel it's going to make them better at what they do, and it's going to bring that into the classroom. This person is a very committed teacher and whatnot. So I just think it's something we should learn about and talk about presenting at a future meeting.
Thank you. Now, a motion by Mr. Trent to adjourn.
You got it.
All right, Mr. Parker, second. All in favor? It's